Ryan Carter sat outside Memorial Hospital at 2 a.m., holding his unconscious 4-year-old son, with an $80 prescription he couldn't afford clutched in his shaking hand. Inside his pocket was his last $23, enough for either 3 days of food or a tank of gas to keep working. Not enough for both. Definitely not enough to save Noah. That's when the black car pulled up, and the woman who stepped out would either save his life or destroy what little pride he had left. This is a story about what happens when desperation meets compassion in the coldest part of winter. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The emergency room fluorescent lights had burned Ryan's eyes for 6 straight hours before the doctor finally called Noah's name. 6 hours of watching his son whimper and press his small palms against his ears, tears sliding down flushed cheeks. 6 hours of Ryan whispering lies about how everything would be okay, how the pain would stop soon, how Daddy would fix it. 6 hours of knowing he was failing. Mr. Carter? The doctor was young, maybe 30, with the kind of face that hadn't yet learned to hide exhaustion. She crouched down to Noah's level in the hallway, her voice gentle. "Hey there, buddy. Those ears hurting pretty bad?" Noah nodded, hiccuping through tears. Ryan watched the examination happen in a blur. The otoscope light, the careful probing, Noah's wince. The doctor's face tightened in that particular way medical professionals have when they're trying not to alarm a parent. "Bilateral ear infection," she said, standing. "Pretty severe. We need to get him on antibiotics immediately." "How immediately?" Ryan heard himself ask. "Tonight. The infection's advanced enough that I'm worried about it spreading. I'm prescribing amoxicillin 400 milligrams twice daily for 10 days. She was already scribbling on her pad. "You can fill this at the hospital pharmacy. They're open until 3. Ryan took the prescription with numb fingers. "And if we wait until tomorrow?" The doctor's expression shifted. Not judgment exactly, but recognition. She'd had this conversation before. "Mr. Carter, I wouldn't recommend waiting. His fever's already at 103. If the infection spreads to ye—" "How much?" The words came out harder than he intended. She hesitated. "The pharmacy can tell you approximately. Probably $70 to $80, without insurance." The number hit him like a fist to the stomach. Ryan felt Noah's weight against his chest, the heat of the fever radiating through the thin Superman t-shirt. $80. He had $23 in his wallet and another $15 in his checking account until Friday's paycheck. Rent was already 12 days late. The electricity bill had a shut-off notice. His truck needed gas to get to the construction site tomorrow morning. "Mr. Carter?" The doctor's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Are you all right?" "Yeah." He shifted Noah higher on his hip, feeling the dampness where fever sweat had soaked through his shirt. "Yeah, we're good. Thank you. The pharmacy is on the first floor near the main entrance. Just give them the prescription." Ryan nodded, already backing away, already calculating impossible math in his head. The doctor called after him about follow-up appointments, about watching for symptoms, about bringing Noah back if the fever didn't break. He heard maybe half of it. The hospital pharmacy was exactly where she said it would be. Bright, clean, efficient. Ryan stood in front of the counter for a full minute before the pharmacist noticed him. "Help you?" The man was older, gray-haired, reading glasses perched on his nose. Ryan slid the prescription across the counter without speaking. The pharmacist typed something into his computer, squinting at the screen. "Insurance?" "No." More typing. "Okay, let me get this filled for you. It'll be about 15 minutes. "How much?" "Let me finish entering it." The pharmacist's fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced speed. "All right, looks like $78.50 without insurance." The number was almost exactly what Ryan had expected. Somehow, that made it worse. "You want me to fill this?" the pharmacist asked. Noah stirred against Ryan's chest, making a small sound of pain. His little fingers clutched at Ryan's jacket, searching for comfort that medicine could provide, but his father's empty wallet couldn't. "Can you—" Ryan's throat felt tight. "Can you hold it? I need to make a phone call." "Sure. I'll keep it here under your name. We close at 3. Ryan checked his phone. 1:47 a.m. He had an hour and 13 minutes to find $78.50. He carried Noah outside into the January cold because he couldn't make the calls he needed to make inside the hospital, because he couldn't let other people in that warm waiting room hear him beg. The air hit like a slap. Ryan had grabbed Noah's coat but forgotten his own in the truck, and now the wind cut through his flannel shirt like it was nothing. He sat on a concrete bench near the entrance, tucking Noah inside his jacket as much as possible. "Daddy?" Noah's voice was small and hoarse. "Yeah, buddy? My ears still hurt." "I know. I'm gonna fix it. Just give Daddy a minute, okay?" Ryan pulled out his phone with shaking hands. Whether from cold or fear, he couldn't tell. His contact list was pathetically short. Most of his old friends had drifted away after Michelle died. Some people didn't know how to handle grief. Others just didn't care enough to try. He called his brother first. "Do you know what time it is?" Marcus sounded groggy, irritated. "I know. I'm sorry. I need a favor." "Jesus, Ryan, again?" "Noah's sick. I need to borrow $80 for antibiotics." "I just lent you money last month." "That was for rent. This is different. It's always different." Marcus sighed heavily. "Look, man, I love you, but I can't keep doing this. You got to get your shit together." "I'm trying it." "Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're just treading water, waiting to drown." Ryan felt Noah shiver against him. "Can you help or not?" "Not this time. I got my own bills, Ryan. I got my own kids." The line went dead. Ryan stared at his phone for a moment before moving to the next contact, then the next. His cousin Kevin, voicemail. His former coworker Dave, disconnected number. The foreman from his construction crew rang 4 times before a woman's sleepy voice told him to try back during business hours. Business hours. As if desperation kept a schedule. He was down to his last option when Noah started crying again. That particular cry that meant the pain had spiked beyond what a 4-year-old could bear. Ryan held him close, rocking slightly, humming the same song Michelle used to sing. It didn't help. Nothing helped except the medicine sitting behind the pharmacy counter, $78.50 away from his son's relief. "Hey!" A voice cut through the darkness. "You guys okay?" Ryan looked up sharply, instinctively defensive. A security guard stood a few feet away, her hand resting casually on her radio. She was young, Latino, with kind eyes that didn't quite match the authority of her uniform. "We're fine," Ryan said automatically. "You've been sitting out here for 20 minutes in 15-degree weather with a sick kid." She moved closer. "That doesn't look fine." "We're just making some calls." "Uh-huh." She glanced at Noah, whose face was pressed against Ryan's chest. "You see a doctor?" "Yeah." "They give you a prescription?" Ryan didn't answer. The guard sat down on the bench, uninvited. "Look, I'm not trying to hassle you, but I've worked here 3 years, and I've seen this exact situation about 100 times. Can't afford the meds?" Ryan's jaw tightened. "I'm handling it." "Okay." She didn't move. "You know about the hospital's financial assistance program?" "I don't qualify." "You sure? Because I make too much." Ryan's laugh was bitter. "Apparently $32,000 a year is too much to get help, but not enough to actually live." The guard nodded slowly. "Yeah, that's the gap that kills people." They sat in silence for a moment. Wind whipped through the hospital entrance, carrying the smell of exhaust and old snow. Noah's crying had quieted to small, hitching breaths. "How much you short?" the guard asked. "It doesn't matter." "How much?" Ryan closed his eyes. "Everything. I'm short. Everything." The guard reached into her pocket and pulled out a $20 bill. She held it out. "It's not much, but I can't." The words came out strangled. "Sure you can. Take it." "You don't even know me." "I know you're sitting outside in the cold trying to figure out how to help your kid." "That's enough." She pressed the money into his hand. "Take it. Pay it forward when you can." Ryan stared at the 20, feeling something crack open in his chest. It wasn't enough, not even close, but it was something. It was a stranger giving a shit when his own brother wouldn't. "Thank you," he managed. "Good luck." The guard stood, adjusting her radio. "And seriously, check out the financial assistance program. There's ways around the income limits if you know how to work the system." She disappeared back inside, leaving Ryan holding $20 and needing 58 more. He pulled Noah closer and dialed the last number in his contacts. "Danny." his old roommate from before Michelle, before everything fell apart. They hadn't spoken in almost a year. Ryan? Holy shit, is that you? Hey, Danny. Man, I was just thinking about you. I need money. Ryan couldn't do the small talk, couldn't pretend this was a friendly catch-up call. I need to borrow $60. The pause on the other end stretched too long. Damn, Ryan, I wish I could, but things are tight right now. Sarah's pregnant, and we're trying to save for... Forget it. Wait, what's going on? Is everything... Ryan hung up. He couldn't listen to another person explain why their problems mattered more than Noah's ear infection. Couldn't hear another variation of, I would if I could. His phone battery was at 12%. The time read 2:23 a.m. The pharmacy closed in 37 minutes. Noah had gone quiet against his chest, but not the peaceful quiet of sleep. The resigned quiet of a child who'd stopped expecting relief. Ryan had seen that same expression on Michelle's face in the hospital those last few weeks, that look of someone who'd exhausted their capacity for hope. He couldn't let Noah learn that look. Not at 4 years old, not when there was medicine that could fix this. Ryan's hand shook as he opened his banking app. $15 in checking. The overdraft would kick in at -500. Each transaction would cost $35 in fees. He could withdraw $60, pay for the medicine with the security guard's $20 and his own $23, and deal with the carnage later. Except dealing with the carnage meant bounced rent check. Eviction. Noah sleeping in the truck in January. He was actually considering it, calculating which disaster would destroy them slower, when the black car pulled up. Ryan didn't notice it at first. He was staring at his phone screen, trying to convince himself that overdraft fees were tomorrow's problem. But Noah noticed. Noah lifted his head from Ryan's chest, his fever-bright eyes tracking the sleek vehicle as it glided to a stop near the hospital entrance. The car was expensive. Not flashy expensive, but quiet expensive. The kind that cost more than Ryan made in a year. Dark paint that seemed to absorb the streetlight. Windows tinted just barely legal. A woman stepped out. Later, Ryan would try to remember his first impression of Victoria Hale, but those first few seconds were lost to the fog of exhaustion and panic. What he remembered was the coat, long, dark, perfectly tailored. Then the shoes, heels that somehow made sense at 2:30 in the morning. Then her face, catching the light from the hospital entrance. She was beautiful in that particular way that made Ryan acutely aware of his own disheveled state. Not magazine beautiful, something sharper, more deliberate. She moved like someone who'd never questioned whether she belonged somewhere. Ryan expected her to walk straight into the hospital. People who stepped out of cars like that didn't make eye contact with people sitting on benches in the cold. Instead, she stopped, turned, looked directly at him and Noah. Ryan instinctively pulled his son closer, that protective reflex that kicked in whenever anyone paid too much attention. He'd learned to be careful, learned that sometimes concern was real and sometimes it was just the prelude to judgment. Victoria walked toward them, not quickly, not with that performative urgency of someone who wanted credit for caring. Just steady, purposeful steps that brought her to within a few feet of the bench. How long have you been sitting out here? Her voice was clear, direct. No fake sweetness. Ryan's first instinct was to lie. Just a few minutes. In that shirt? In this weather? She glanced at his flannel, at Noah shivering inside his jacket. With a sick child? We're fine. That's not what I asked. She studied him with eyes that missed nothing. How long? Lady, I appreciate the concern, but we don't need How long? Something in her tone cut through his defensiveness. Not aggressive, exactly, but absolutely unwilling to accept bullshit. Half an hour, Ryan admitted. Why? That's none of your business. Victoria tilted her head slightly, considering him. Then she looked at Noah, really looked at him, at the flushed cheeks, the way he clutched his ears, the defeated slump of his small shoulders. Ear infection? She asked. Ryan blinked. How did you? I have a nephew, same age, same symptoms last month. She stepped closer. Did they prescribe antibiotics? He didn't answer. Are you sitting out here because you can't afford the prescription? Her voice had softened slightly, but the directness remained. Ryan's jaw tightened. Like I said, it's none of your business. You're right, it's not. Victoria pulled out her phone. But I'm making it my business. We don't need charity. I'm not offering charity. She was already dialing. I'm offering a solution. Ryan wanted to tell her to leave them alone, wanted to grab Noah and walk away from this woman who'd decided their crisis was her project. But Noah chose that moment to whimper against his chest, a sound so small and hurt that it cut through every piece of pride Ryan had left. Victoria spoke into her phone. This is Victoria Hale. I need you to pull a prescription for a Ryan Carter. Fill it and bring it to the main entrance. A pause. Yes, now. Another pause. Bill it to my account. Wait, Ryan started. She held up one finger, still listening to whoever was on the other end. Perfect. 5 minutes. She hung up and looked at Ryan. What's your son's name? You can't just... His name. Noah. How old? 4. Victoria nodded, processing. Then she did something Ryan didn't expect. She sat down on the bench beside him, seemingly unconcerned about her expensive coat touching the concrete. I'm Victoria, she said. And before you tell me again that you don't need help, I'm going to tell you something. 3 years ago, I sat in a parking lot very similar to this one, watching my mother try to figure out how to pay for my brother's EpiPen. She called every person in her contacts. She checked every credit card. She calculated whether she could skip the mortgage payment. Victoria's voice remained steady, but something flickered in her expression. I watched the strongest woman I know break down because she couldn't immediately fix a fixable problem. Ryan stared at her. A stranger helped us that night, Victoria continued. Paid for the EpiPen, didn't ask for anything back. I've never forgotten what it felt like to be that helpless, or what it felt like when someone decided we were worth helping. She met his eyes. So when I see a father sitting outside in 15-degree weather with a sick child trying to figure out impossible math, I recognize it. And I stop. Why? Ryan's voice came out rough. Because someone stopped for us. They sat in silence. Noah had gone quiet, maybe sensing the shift in tension. Inside the hospital, Ryan could see someone moving toward the entrance, a pharmacist carrying a white bag. I can't pay you back, Ryan said quietly. I'm not asking you to. I don't even know you. No, Victoria agreed. You don't. The pharmacist pushed through the doors, spotted Victoria, and hurried over. Dr. Hale, I have the medication. Doctor, she was a doctor. The pharmacist handed over the bag. Victoria checked the label, then passed it to Ryan. Amoxicillin, 400 milligrams, twice daily with food. Ryan took the bag with numb hands. Inside were 2 bottles, the antibiotic and children's ibuprofen for the fever. The ibuprofen wasn't on the prescription, the pharmacist said. But I figured, good call. Victoria stood, brushing off her coat. Thank you. The pharmacist nodded and headed back inside. Victoria looked down at Ryan, her expression unreadable. Get him home, she said. Give him the first dose tonight. The fever should break by tomorrow afternoon. If it doesn't, bring him to the ER and ask for me. I don't understand, Ryan said. What's to understand? Why you did this? Victoria was quiet for a moment. I told you, someone helped us once. That's not enough of a reason. No? She tilted her head. What would be enough of a reason? Should I need a complicated motivation to help a sick child? Should there be forms to fill out, qualifications to meet? Her voice sharpened slightly. You were sitting outside in the cold trying to figure out whether to pay rent or save your son from an ear infection. That's not a decision anyone should have to make. The fact that you do? That's what's complicated. Me helping is actually pretty simple. Ryan felt something hot building behind his eyes. He blinked hard. Thank you. You already said that. I mean it. I know. Victoria pulled her coat tighter against the wind. I run the financial assistance program here. If you need help with future medical bills, come see me. There are options. I looked into it. I make too much. There are always options, she repeated, with the confidence of someone who made rules instead of following them. My office is on the 4th floor, Victoria Hale. She started to walk away. Wait, Ryan called. Are you a doctor? The pharmacist called you? I'm the hospital administrator, Victoria said over her shoulder. But everyone calls me doctor anyway. Too much education, not enough sense to use it in a more profitable field. She climbed back into her car before Ryan could respond. The engine purred to life, expensive and quiet. And then she was gone, leaving Ryan sitting on a concrete bench with a bag of medicine and a head full of questions. Noah stirred. "Daddy, was that a nice lady?" "Yeah, buddy." Ryan's voice cracked. "Yeah, that was a very nice lady. My ears still hurt. I know, but I've got medicine now. We're going to fix it." Ryan stood, his legs stiff from the cold, and carried Noah toward his truck. The medication felt impossibly light in his hand, $80 worth of relief, paid for by a stranger who decided they mattered. He drove home in a daze, through empty streets where frost turned everything silver. Their apartment was in a building that had been nice once, maybe 30 years ago. Now the hallway smelled like cigarettes and boiled cabbage, and the radiator only worked when it felt like it. But it was warm, and Noah had medicine. And for tonight, that was enough. Ryan gave Noah the first dose of amoxicillin with a small cup of applesauce, then the ibuprofen with water. Noah made a face at the taste, but swallowed obediently. "Good job, buddy," Ryan said. "Let's get you to bed." Noah's room was small, barely big enough for the twin bed and a plastic dresser, but Ryan had tried to make it nice. Glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, drawings taped to the walls, a photo of Michelle on the nightstand, smiling in a way that made Ryan's chest ache. He tucked Noah under the blankets and sat on the edge of the bed. "Tell me the story," Noah said. "Which one?" "The one about Mommy." Ryan swallowed hard. "She loved you very much. You know that, right?" "I know. But tell me the story about when I was born." Born. Ryan had given up correcting that particular grammar mistake. It was too perfect to fix. "When you were born," Ryan started, the words familiar as prayer. "It was snowing. Your mom and I drove to the hospital, and she was so excited she kept trying to help me drive, even though she was the one having a baby." Noah giggled. It was the first happy sound Ryan had heard from him all day. "And when you finally arrived, you were so tiny. The smallest thing I'd ever seen. You had this little angry face, like you couldn't believe we'd made you leave where you were comfortable." "And what did Mommy say?" "She said, 'Look at him, Ryan. Look at what we made.'" Ryan's voice went thick. "And I looked at you, and I thought, this is it. This is everything that matters." "Do you still think that?" Noah's eyes were heavy, the medicine starting to work. "Every single day, buddy." "Okay." Noah's eyes drifted shut. "Love you, Daddy." "Love you too." Ryan sat there until Noah's breathing evened out into sleep, watching the rise and fall of his small chest. The fever had already started to break. He could see the flush fading from Noah's cheeks. In the kitchen, Ryan made instant coffee and sat at the table with his laptop. The screen was cracked, had been for 6 months, but it still worked. He opened his banking app and stared at the $15 in his checking account. The rent was due. The electricity bill had a disconnect notice. His truck needed an oil change 3,000 miles ago, and he'd just been saved by a woman he'd never met, who'd paid for medicine he couldn't afford, who'd looked at him and Noah and decided they were worth stopping for. Ryan didn't believe in signs, didn't believe the universe sent messages, or that everything happened for a reason. Michelle had died young, leaving him with a 4-year-old in debt he'd never escape. There was no reason for that, no lesson. But sitting in his kitchen at 4 a.m., listening to his son breathe easy for the first time in days, Ryan felt something shift. Not hope exactly, something smaller and more fragile. Possibility. Victoria had mentioned a financial assistance program, had said there were always options, with the certainty of someone who knew how to bend rules. She'd given him her office number, 4th floor. Ryan closed his laptop and stared at the white medication bag on the counter. Inside was more than antibiotics. Inside was proof that sometimes strangers showed up. That sometimes the answer to why me was simply, why not you? He thought about Victoria sitting on that cold bench, her expensive coat touching concrete. Thought about her voice when she'd mentioned her mother in a parking lot. Thought about the way she'd looked at Noah, not with pity, but with recognition. The radiator clanked to life, filling the apartment with metallic warmth. Outside, the first gray light of dawn crept across Chicago's skyline. In a few hours, Ryan would need to get up, get Noah to daycare, get himself to the construction site. The impossible math would start again. Hours worked versus bills due, energy expended versus energy remaining. But right now, in this moment, Noah was sleeping peacefully. The fever was breaking. and somewhere in this city, a woman who barely knew them had decided they mattered. Ryan pulled out the business card the pharmacist had given him along with the medication. Simple, elegant printing. Victoria Hale, Hospital Administrator, Memorial Hospital. He turned it over in his hands, feeling the weight of quality cardstock. Tomorrow, he'd go back to figuring out how to survive. Tomorrow, he'd face the rent and the bills and all the cascading consequences of being poor in a city that priced out poverty. But maybe, just maybe, he'd also climb to the 4th floor and see what options looked like when someone actually wanted to help. Ryan tucked the card into his wallet and headed to bed. Through the thin walls, he could hear their neighbor's TV playing some late-night infomercial. Traffic sounds drifted up from the street below. Normal sounds. Life continuing. He lay down on his mattress, no frame, just box spring and desperation, and closed his eyes. Sleep came slowly, his mind replaying the evening on loop. The doctor's worried face, the pharmacist's careful politeness, the security guard's $20, Victoria's steady voice saying, "There are always options." Maybe there were. Maybe Ryan had spent so long drowning that he'd forgotten to look for the ladder. Maybe tomorrow could be different. Or maybe tomorrow would be exactly the same, and tonight was just a random act of kindness in an otherwise indifferent universe. Either way, Noah was okay. And for a father who'd spent 2 years learning to measure success in increasingly smaller units, that was everything. Ryan slept. Ryan woke to Noah standing beside his bed, tugging at his sleeve. "Daddy, my ears don't hurt anymore." The words took a moment to register. Ryan blinked against the morning light filtering through the blinds, his body protesting the 5 hours of sleep it had gotten. He reached out and touched Noah's forehead, cool. The fever had broken completely. "Yeah?" Ryan's voice came out rough. "They feel better?" Noah nodded enthusiastically. "Can I have pancakes?" Ryan checked his phone. 7:43 a.m. He was supposed to be at the construction site by 8. "Buddy, I don't have time to make... Please, you always make pancakes when I'm sick." That had been Michelle's rule. Sick days meant pancakes, even if it was inconvenient. Especially if it was inconvenient. She'd insisted that comfort mattered more than schedules. Ryan pushed himself out of bed. "Okay, but quick ones." In the kitchen, he mixed the batter while Noah sat at the table, chattering about a dream he'd had involving dinosaurs and a spaceship. The normalcy of it, the ordinary morning chaos of a 4-year-old who felt better, made Ryan's chest tight. He'd almost lost this. Not Noah himself, but this version of Noah. The healthy, chattering, pancake-demanding version. All because of $80. The pancakes were uneven and slightly burnt, but Noah ate them without complaint, syrup dripping down his chin. Ryan gulped coffee and checked his phone again. 3 missed calls from the construction foreman. A text. "Where are you?" "Shit," Ryan muttered. "That's a bad word," Noah said cheerfully. "You're right. Sorry." Ryan fired off a quick text. "Running late. Son was sick. Be there in 30. The response came immediately. "You were late Tuesday too. This is a problem." Ryan stared at the message, feeling the familiar weight settle over him. Tuesday, he'd been late because Noah's daycare had called. Another kid had lice. All the kids needed checking. Wednesday, he'd left early because the daycare closed at 6 and traffic had been hell. Now Friday, late again. He was a good worker, fast, careful, reliable when he showed up. But showing up was getting harder. "Daddy?" Noah was watching him with those 2 observant eyes. "Are you in trouble?" "No, buddy. Everything's fine." Ryan pocketed his phone. "Let's get you ready for daycare." The morning dissolved into the usual controlled chaos. Finding shoes, packing Noah's backpack, checking that the second dose of antibiotics was in the diaper bag along with instructions for the daycare staff. Ryan's truck protested when he turned the key, engine coughing before it caught. Sunshine. Daycare was in a converted house 20 minutes away, run by a woman named Mrs. Patterson, who charged less than the corporate centers and didn't ask too many questions when payment was late. Noah normally dragged his feet about going, but this morning he bounced out of the truck, energized by feeling better. "Mr. Carter?" Mrs. Patterson met them at the door, her expression serious. "Can we talk?" Ryan's stomach dropped. "Is something wrong?" "Just for a minute." She smiled at Noah. "Go ahead inside, sweetie. Sarah's setting up the blocks." Noah ran off, leaving Ryan standing in the doorway with a woman who was clearly about to deliver bad news. "Your payment is 3 weeks overdue," Mrs. Patterson said quietly. "I know things are tight, and I've been patient, but I can't keep extending—" "I get paid today," Ryan interrupted. "I'll bring it by tonight, all of it." "That's what you said last week." Last week Noah was sick. The emergency room— He stopped. Excuses didn't matter. "I'll have it tonight, I promise." Mrs. Patterson studied him for a long moment. "I like Noah. He's a sweet kid, but I'm running a business, not a charity. If you can't pay by Monday, I'll have to give his spot to someone else." "I understand." "Do you?" "Because you're a good father, Ryan, but being a good father means being reliable. And lately, I said I understand." The words came out harder than he intended. Mrs. Patterson's expression softened slightly. "Tonight. All 3 weeks." Ryan nodded and left before she could say anything else. In the truck, he did the math. His paycheck would be around $900 after taxes. Rent was $1,200 already late. The daycare was $240 for 3 weeks. Electricity bill was $160 with the late fee. Gas, food, the truck payment. The numbers didn't work. They never worked. Ryan drove to the construction site with the radio off, his mind churning through impossible calculations. He was framing a new development in Lincoln Park, luxury condos that would sell for $500,000 each. The irony wasn't lost on him. He built homes he'd never afford for people who'd never notice him. The foreman, Mike, was waiting when Ryan pulled up. "You're 40 minutes late." "I know. I'm sorry. My son was sick and—" "Ryan." Mike's voice was tired. "I like you. You're a good worker when you're here, but this is the 3rd time in 2 weeks. It won't happen again." "That's what you said Tuesday." Mike ran a hand through his hair. "Look, I got a crew of guys who show up on time every day. Guys without kids, without emergencies, without excuses. You know how hard it is to justify keeping you on when— Are you firing me? I'm telling you to get your shit together. You got one more chance, that's it." Ryan nodded, throat tight. "Understood." He worked through lunch, trying to make up for the lost time. His hands moved automatically, measuring, cutting, nailing, while his mind stayed stuck on the morning's conversation. One more chance. 3 weeks of daycare payments due tonight. Victoria Hale's business card in his wallet. Around 2, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. "This is Ryan." "Mr. Carter, this is Jennifer from Memorial Hospital Billing Department. I'm calling about your emergency room visit from last night." Ryan's stomach clenched. He'd been so focused on the prescription costs that he'd forgotten about the actual ER bill. "How much?" "Your total is $843. We can set up a payment plan if—" "I need to call you back." Ryan hung up before she could continue. $843. For 6 hours in a waiting room and 10 minutes with a doctor. Added to everything else he couldn't pay. He stood on the 2nd floor of an unfinished condo, surrounded by exposed beams and drywall dust, and felt the walls closing in. This was his life now. An endless series of bills he couldn't pay, jobs he couldn't afford to lose, and a son who deserved better than a father barely treading water. Ryan pulled out Victoria's business card and stared at it. 4th floor. Financial assistance program. There are always options. He didn't believe her, couldn't afford to believe her. Hope was expensive, and he was broke in every sense that mattered. But Noah's fever had broken. The antibiotics were working, and a stranger had stopped her car at 2:30 in the morning because she'd decided they mattered. Maybe that was enough. Ryan waited until his shift ended at 5, then drove straight to Memorial Hospital instead of going home. The building looked different in daylight, less desperate, more bureaucratic. He parked in the visitor lot and sat in his truck for 10 minutes, trying to convince himself this wasn't a waste of time. The 4th floor was administrative offices, quiet, carpeted, fluorescent lit. A receptionist sat behind a desk that looked like it cost more than Ryan's truck. "Can I help you?" She was young, professionally pleasant. "I'm looking for Victoria Hale." "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but she told me to come by." "About the financial assistance program." The receptionist's expression shifted slightly. Not quite sympathy, but close. "Your name?" "Ryan Carter." She picked up her phone, spoke quietly into it, then smiled at Ryan. "She'll see you, down the hall, last door on the right." Ryan walked down a corridor lined with closed doors and muted conversations. Victoria's office was at the end, door half open. He knocked anyway. Come in? Victoria sat behind a desk covered in papers, laptop open, reading glasses perched on her nose. She looked up when Ryan entered, and for a moment he saw genuine surprise cross her face. Mr. Carter, you said to come by. Ryan felt suddenly awkward, aware of his work boots on her clean carpet, the drywall dust probably still clinging to his clothes. If this is a bad time, no, sit. She gestured to a chair across from her desk. How's Noah? Better. Fever broke this morning. He's back to his normal self. Good. Victoria closed her laptop, giving him her full attention. What can I do for you? Ryan pulled the hospital bill from his pocket and slid it across the desk. I got a call about this today. $843. Victoria glanced at the paper without touching it. And you can't pay it. Not even close. Okay. She pulled up something on her computer, typed quickly. Walk me through your situation. Income, expenses, dependents. Is this going to help? Because I already looked into financial assistance and I make too much to qualify. You looked into the standard program. Victoria's fingers moved across the keyboard. I'm not offering you the standard program. Then what are you offering? Options. She looked at him over her reading glasses. But I need the full picture, so talk. Ryan hesitated. Something about sitting in this clean office, talking to this woman who'd probably never missed a rent payment in her life, made him want to shut down. But he thought about Noah asking for pancakes that morning, about Mrs. Patterson's ultimatum, about Mike's warning. One more chance. I make about $32,000 a year, Ryan started. Construction work, hourly. My rent is $1,200 a month for a one-bedroom in a building that should probably be condemned. Daycare is $80 a week. Utilities, truck payment, insurance, food. He stopped. It doesn't add up. It never adds up. Your wife? Victoria asked. Died 2 years ago. Cancer. The medical bills from that are still... Ryan's voice caught. I'm still paying those off. Victoria was quiet for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then she said, I'm going to be direct with you, Mr. Carter. The Standard Financial Assistance Program has income cutoffs that you exceed by about $2,000 annually. It's a stupid system that creates exactly the gap you're stuck in. Too much for help, not enough to survive. So I'm out of luck. I didn't say that. Victoria leaned back in her chair. There are discretionary funds, emergency assistance pools, grant programs that most people don't know exist because they're not advertised. I have access to all of them. Why would you do that for me? Because I can. She said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Because the system is broken, and I'm in a position to work around it. Because your son needed antibiotics, and you were sitting outside in the cold trying to figure out which bill to sacrifice. Ryan stared at her. I don't understand you. What's to understand? People don't just help, not without wanting something back. Victoria's expression hardened slightly. Is that what you've learned? That kindness always comes with a price? In my experience, yeah. Then your experience sucks. She pulled the hospital bill toward her, scanned it briefly. I'm going to submit this to our emergency assistance fund. It'll cover 90%. You'll owe about $85, which we can put on a payment plan of $20 a month. No interest. Just like that? Just like that. Ryan felt something unknot in his chest. What about future bills? Noah gets sick a lot. Kids do. We'll set up a sliding scale fee structure for his care, based on your actual income and expenses, not some arbitrary federal poverty line. Victoria made a note on her computer. Anything else? The daycare. The words came out before Ryan could stop them. I owe 3 weeks. If I don't pay tonight, Noah loses his spot. Victoria looked up. That's not a medical expense. I can't help with that through the hospital. Right, yeah, I figured. Ryan started to stand. Thanks for... Sit down. He sat. Victoria pulled out her phone and made a call. David, it's Victoria Hale. I need you to pull up your Client Assistance Fund guidelines. A pause. No, not medical. Child care. Another pause. How much discretionary do you have left this quarter? She listened, nodding. Perfect. I'm sending someone over. Ryan Carter. He needs childcare payment assistance. 3 weeks at... She looked at Ryan. $240, Ryan said numbly. $240 total. Can you process that today? Victoria smiled. You're the best. I owe you coffee. She hung up and wrote an address on a notepad, tearing off the sheet and handing it to Ryan. David Morse, Community Assistance Office, 2 blocks from here. He'll have a check ready in 30 minutes. Ryan stared at the address. I don't understand what just happened. I called in a favor from a friend who runs a nonprofit. They have emergency childcare funds for exactly this kind of situation. But you just met me. You don't know if I'm lying about any of this. Are you lying? No, but then what's the problem? Victoria stood, clearly signaling the meeting was over. Go to David's office, get the check, pay your daycare, feed your kid. Ryan didn't move. Why are you doing this? I told you last night. Someone helped my family once. That's not enough of a reason. Victoria walked around her desk and leaned against it, arms crossed. You want a better reason? Fine. I'm the administrator of a hospital that serves 40,000 people a year. Half of them can't afford their care. Most of them fall through the cracks because our system is designed to help either the very poorest or the well-insured, and everyone in between just suffers. Her voice was measured but intense. I have a limited amount of power to fix that. So when someone lands in my office, someone who's actually trying, who's working their ass off and still drowning, yeah, I help. Because I can. Because someone should. You don't know me, Ryan repeated. I know you sat outside in 15-degree weather with a sick kid rather than let him suffer. I know you called everyone in your contacts trying to borrow money. I know you're here right now, asking for help even though it's clearly killing your pride to do it. She met his eyes. That's enough. Ryan felt his throat go tight. Thank you. Stop thanking me and go get that check before David's office closes. He stood, holding the address like it might disappear. At the door, he paused. If there's ever anything I can do, there is, Victoria interrupted. When you're on your feet, help someone else. That's how this works. Ryan nodded and left before his voice could break. David Morse's office was in a renovated brownstone, warm and cluttered in a way that felt deliberately welcoming. David himself was in his 50s, gray-bearded, with the gentle manner of someone who'd spent a lifetime listening to hard stories. Victoria called ahead, he said, pulling up Ryan's information. You're having a rough patch. You could say that. Well, we can help with the childcare costs. It's a one-time emergency assistance payment, funded through a combination of private donations and a city grant. David printed out some forms. I'll need you to sign a few things, verify your income, provide the daycare's information. Ryan filled out the paperwork, his handwriting cramped and uneven. The questions were invasive: income, expenses, dependents, debt. But he answered them all honestly, too tired to care about privacy. 20 minutes later, David handed him a check for $240. Give this directly to your daycare provider, David said. And if you find yourself in this situation again, come back. We can't help every time, but we try. Why do people like you exist? Ryan asked. David smiled. Because people like you exist. Because kids like Noah deserve a chance. Because the alternative is watching good people drown. He walked Ryan to the door. Take care of yourself, Mr. Carter, and that boy of yours. Ryan drove to Sunshine Daycare in a daze. Mrs. Patterson answered the door, clearly surprised to see him. You said tonight, Ryan said, holding out the check. Here's tonight. Mrs. Patterson took the check, examined it, then looked at Ryan with new eyes. Community Assistance Fund. Is that a problem? No, it's smart. She stepped back to let him in. Noah's in the playroom. You want to say hi before you go? Ryan found Noah building an elaborate tower out of blocks with 2 other kids. When Noah saw him, his face lit up. Daddy, look how tall! That's amazing, buddy. Are we going home? Not yet. I just came to talk to Mrs. Patterson. I'll pick you up at the normal time, okay? Okay. Noah turned back to his tower, already absorbed. Mrs. Patterson walked Ryan back to the entrance. I'm sorry I was hard on you this morning. You weren't hard, you were fair. Still, I know you're trying. She hesitated. For what it's worth, Noah talks about you all the time. He knows he's loved. The words hit harder than they should have. Thanks. Ryan made it back to his truck before the emotions caught up with him. He sat in the parking lot, hands shaking on the steering wheel, and let himself feel it. The relief, the gratitude, the bone-deep exhaustion of nearly losing everything, and somehow not. His phone buzzed. Text from the construction foreman. "You left your lunchbox. It's in the office." Right. Because in the chaos of the morning, he'd forgotten to eat. Again. Ryan drove back to the site, grabbed his lunchbox, and found Mike still in the office doing paperwork. "Hey," Mike said, not looking up. "You good?" "Yeah, I'm good." "You sure? Because this morning you looked like you were about to break." Ryan leaned against the doorframe. "You ever have everything fall apart at once?" "Every damn day when my kids were young." Mike finally looked at him. "Why do you think I'm so hard on you about being late?" "Because I know what you're going through, and I know that if you don't figure out how to handle it, it'll bury you." "I'm trying." "I know you are." Mike's expression softened. "But trying isn't always enough. Sometimes you need help, and you're shit at asking for it." "I'm working on that." "Good. Because that kid of yours needs you functional, not barely hanging on." Ryan nodded and left. On the drive home, he stopped at a grocery store and bought actual food, not just ramen and canned soup, but chicken and vegetables and bread that wasn't on sale because it was expiring. The total came to $43, which felt reckless and necessary. At home, he cooked dinner while Noah did puzzles on the living room floor. Real dinner. Chicken, rice, steamed broccoli. The kind of meal Michelle would have made. They ate together at the small kitchen table, Noah chattering about his day. Ryan half listened, his mind still processing everything that had happened. Victoria's office. David's check. Mrs. Patterson's apology. Help existed. Not always. Not reliably. But sometimes. After dinner, Ryan gave Noah his second dose of antibiotics, then let him watch cartoons while he cleaned up. At the sink, washing dishes, Ryan found himself thinking about Victoria's question. What's to understand? The problem was, Ryan didn't understand. Didn't understand why she'd stopped, why she'd made calls on his behalf, why she'd cared. In his experience, people didn't just help. There was always an angle, always a price. His brother wanted to feel superior when he refused to lend money. His old friends had faded away because grief was uncomfortable. Even Michelle's family had distanced themselves after she died, like Ryan and Noah were reminders of something they'd rather forget. But Victoria had sat on a cold bench and listened, had made calls, had connected him to resources he didn't know existed. She'd helped because she could. Ryan dried his hands and pulled out her business card again. He should write her a note, or send flowers, or something to acknowledge what she'd done, except she'd told him not to thank her, had told him to help someone else instead. Ryan thought about that while he put Noah to bed, while he sat alone in the quiet apartment, while he tried to sleep. The idea that kindness could be circular, that being helped came with a responsibility to keep it going. It was a nice idea, foreign, but nice. Around midnight, Ryan gave up on sleep and opened his laptop. He pulled up his bank account, still depressingly low, but not as catastrophic as it had been this morning. Then, almost without thinking, he opened a new document and started typing. He wasn't sure what he was writing at first. Maybe a thank you letter. Maybe just thoughts that needed to get out of his head. But the words came anyway, filling the screen with everything he hadn't said in Victoria's office. About Michelle. About the 2 years since she died. About loving Noah so much it physically hurt and still feeling like he was failing every single day. About the shame of sitting in that hospital parking lot. About the shock of someone actually helping. Ryan wrote until his eyes burned and his fingers ached. Then he saved the document, closed his laptop, and finally slept. He dreamed of Michelle that night. Not the sick version from the hospital, but the healthy version who danced in their kitchen and sang off-key and loved Noah with a fierceness that made Ryan believe in things he couldn't name. In the dream, she looked at him and said, "Let people help you, Ryan. Stop trying to do this alone." He woke with tears on his face and morning light streaming through the blinds. Noah was already awake, sitting on the floor with his action figures, narrating an elaborate story about heroes and villains. He looked up when Ryan emerged from the bedroom. "Morning, Daddy." "Morning, buddy. How are your ears?" "Good." Noah went back to his game, then added casually, "Is the nice lady going to come visit us?" Ryan froze. "What nice lady?" "From the hospital, the one who gave me medicine." "I don't think so, buddy. She's really busy. But I want to say thank you." Ryan crouched down to Noah's level. "You know what? Maybe we can make her a card. Noah's face lit up. With dinosaurs? With whatever you want. They spent the morning making a thank you card on construction paper Ryan found in a drawer. Noah drew dinosaurs and spaceships in crayon while Ryan wrote a short message. Thank you for helping us. We won't forget it. Simple. Inadequate. But something. On Monday, Ryan dropped Noah at daycare without incident, then drove to Memorial Hospital. He left the card with the fourth-floor receptionist, feeling awkward and uncertain. Should I wait? He asked. Oh, she's in meetings all morning, the receptionist said kindly. But I'll make sure she gets it. Ryan nodded and left. He didn't expect a response. Didn't expect anything, really. Victoria had already done more than enough. But Wednesday evening, his phone buzzed with an unknown number. This is Ryan. Mr. Carter, Victoria Hale. His heart kicked up. Is something wrong? No, I got Noah's card. The dinosaurs are very impressive. Ryan smiled despite himself. He's very proud of those. Tell him thank you from me. A pause. Actually, I'm calling about something else. Do you have a minute? Yeah. I need help with a project I'm working on. It's related to the financial assistance program. We're trying to expand it, make it more accessible. But the problem is most of the people designing these programs have never actually needed them. Okay. I'd like your input, your perspective. What worked, what didn't, what almost made you give up. Ryan was quiet for a moment. You want me to consult? In a manner of speaking, more like, help me understand what it's actually like, so I can make the program better. I don't know anything about healthcare administration. You know about being desperate and needing help. That's exactly what I need. Ryan thought about it, about Victoria's office, David's kindness, the way a few phone calls had changed everything, about Michelle's dream voice saying to let people help. When? He asked. Whenever works for you, evenings, weekends, whatever fits your schedule. Why me? Because you asked about other struggling parents when you were barely holding it together yourself. Victoria's voice was matter-of-fact. Because you see the system from the side that matters, and because I think you'd be good at this. Ryan didn't believe that last part, but he heard himself saying, okay, yeah, I'll help. Good. I'll set something up and call you with details. She hung up before he could second-guess himself. Ryan sat in his truck outside the construction site, phone in his hand, and felt the ground shift slightly under his feet. Not a big shift, nothing dramatic, just possibility. Opening up. Just barely. The first meeting happened on a Saturday afternoon in Victoria's office, which felt strange without the usual hum of weekday activity. The hallways were empty, fluorescent lights dimmed to half power, and Ryan's footsteps echoed on the tile as he made his way to the fourth floor. He'd brought Noah with him. Couldn't afford a babysitter, and Mrs. Patterson didn't work weekends. Victoria had said it was fine when he'd called to ask, but Ryan still felt awkward showing up to what was essentially a work meeting with a 4-year-old in tow. Noah clutched his hand as they walked down the corridor, eyes wide at the unfamiliar environment. Is this where the nice lady works? Noah whispered. Yeah, buddy. Remember, inside voice, okay? And stay in your seat. I will. Victoria's door was open. She sat at her desk in jeans and a sweater, the first time Ryan had seen her in anything other than professional clothes. It made her seem younger, more approachable. She looked up when they entered, and her face broke into a genuine smile. Noah, good to see you again. Noah hid behind Ryan's leg, suddenly shy. He's usually more talkative, Ryan said. New places make him nervous? That's smart. Stranger danger and all that. Victoria stood and walked around her desk. Noah, I set up some things for you over here. Do you like coloring? She gestured to a small table in the corner where she'd laid out coloring books, crayons, and what looked like dinosaur stickers. Noah's eyes lit up. Dinosaurs! I thought you might like those. Victoria glanced at Ryan. He can color while we talk. Is that okay? Yeah, thanks. Ryan felt something shift in his chest. She'd thought about Noah, had prepared for him. Noah settled at the small table, immediately absorbed in arranging the stickers by size. Ryan sat across from Victoria's desk, suddenly nervous. So, Victoria said, pulling out a notepad, let me explain what I'm trying to do here. Memorial's current financial assistance program has a budget of about $2 million annually. Sounds like a lot, but it serves roughly 1,200 families. That's less than $2,000 per family, and most medical situations cost way more than that. Okay, the board has agreed to expand the program, but only if I can prove it's effective. That means I need data, stories, real examples of how the current system fails and how we can fix it. She looked at him directly. That's where you come in. Ryan shifted uncomfortably. I'm not good at telling stories. You don't need to be good at it. You just need to be honest. Victoria clicked her pen. Walk me through what happened when Noah got sick. Every detail, what you were thinking, what stopped you from getting help, what almost made you give up. You already know what happened. I know what I saw. I don't know what you felt. Ryan glanced at Noah, making sure he was still absorbed in his coloring. Then, haltingly, he started talking. About sitting in the ER for 6 hours. About the doctor's worried face. About standing in front of the pharmacy counter and realizing he couldn't pay. Victoria took notes, occasionally asking questions. When the pharmacist told you the cost, what was your first thought? That I was going to let my son down. Not anger at the price? Not frustration with the system? I was too scared to be angry. She wrote that down. What would have happened if I hadn't been there? Ryan was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. I was thinking about overdrafting my account, taking the fees, dealing with the bounced rent check later, or maybe... He stopped. Maybe what? Maybe just not filling it, hoping the fever would break on its own, praying nothing worse happened. Victoria's pen stilled. You would have risked your son's health. I would have gambled on it. Ryan's voice was rough. Because sometimes gambling is all you have left. The words hung in the air between them. Noah hummed quietly at his table, oblivious to the weight of the conversation. How often do you have to make those kinds of gambles? Victoria asked. Every week. Sometimes every day. Ryan rubbed his face. Do I fix the truck or buy groceries? Do I pay the electric bill or keep gas in the tank? Do I take Noah to urgent care for that cough or wait and see if it gets better? And if you guess wrong, then things get worse. Victoria set down her pen and leaned back in her chair. The system isn't designed for people like you. It's designed for people who are destitute, homeless, jobless, completely broke, or people who have good insurance. Everyone in between just suffers. Yeah, I figured that out. So how do we fix it? Ryan blinked. You're asking me? You're the expert on being stuck in the gap. I'm just the administrator. Victoria's expression was serious. If you could redesign the assistance program, what would it look like? I don't know anything about... Forget the bureaucracy. Just tell me what would have helped. Ryan thought about it. About all the nights he'd sat at his kitchen table trying to make numbers work that would never work. About the shame of asking for help and being told he made too much. About the fear that one mistake would send everything crashing down. Someone to talk to, he said finally. Not a hotline or a website. An actual person who could look at my situation and help me figure out what to do. Because half the time I don't even know what resources exist. Victoria nodded, writing. What else? Flexibility? The cutoffs are too rigid. I make $32,000. The limit is $30,000. That $2,000 means I get nothing, but it's not enough to actually survive on. Agreed. What else? Speed. When Noah got sick, I needed help that night. Not in 3 weeks after my application was processed. Not after I'd provided 6 months of pay stubs and utility bills. That night. Emergency fund with fast processing. Victoria made another note. What about follow-up? After you got help, what would have made it easier? Ryan hadn't thought about that. I guess knowing it was there if I needed it again? Like not feeling like I'd used up my one chance. Ongoing support rather than one-time assistance. Yeah. They talked for another hour, Ryan gradually relaxing as he realized Victoria was actually listening. Not just nodding and taking notes, but really hearing what he said and building on it. What about stigma? Victoria asked. Did you feel judged when you asked for help? By who? You? Anyone. Ryan thought about his brother's voice on the phone, about Mrs. Patterson's expression when he'd explained why payment was late, about the pharmacist's careful neutrality. Everyone judges, he said, even people who try not to. They see a guy who can't afford medicine for his kid and they think, what did he do wrong? Why can't he get his shit together? Did I judge you? I don't know. Maybe. You hit it better than most. Victoria's expression flickered. For what it's worth, the only thing I thought when I saw you was that the system had failed. Not that you'd failed. The system. That's a nice thing to say. It's the truth. Victoria closed her notepad. You know what most people don't understand about poverty? It's not about being lazy or making bad choices. It's about being one emergency away from disaster all the time. And when you live like that, you can't plan, can't save, can't get ahead. Because there is no ahead. There's just surviving until tomorrow. Ryan stared at her. How do you know that? My mom raised 3 kids on a teacher's salary after my dad died. We were in that gap too. Too much for welfare, not enough for stability. I watched her choose between electricity and groceries, watched her cry over medical bills she couldn't pay. Victoria's voice stayed level, but something in her eyes shifted. The only reason I'm sitting in this office instead of still struggling is because someone gave her a break. One person, one opportunity. That's all it took. What happened? A principal at her school found out she was working 3 jobs and still barely making it. He connected her to a scholarship program for me, helped her find better paying work, just gave a shit when he didn't have to. Victoria met Ryan's eyes. So yeah, I know what it looks like when the system fails people. I lived it. They were quiet for a moment. Noah broke the silence by announcing he'd finished his coloring page, and could he have a snack? Ryan checked his watch. They'd been talking for almost 2 hours. We should probably go. Wait. Victoria stood and disappeared into a small kitchenette attached to her office, returning with a juice box and a pack of crackers. She handed them to Noah, who accepted them with wide eyes. What do you say? Ryan prompted. Thank you, Noah said quietly. You're welcome. Victoria smiled at him, then looked at Ryan. I want to do this again, same time next week. You want more of my complaining? I want more of your perspective. There's a difference. She walked them to the door. And Ryan, what you said today about gambling being all you have left, I'm going to use that with your permission. Use it how? In my presentation to the board, when I'm fighting for more funding, for better policies. Sometimes people need to hear the ugly truth before they'll act. Ryan nodded. Yeah, okay. On the drive home, Noah chattered about the dinosaur stickers and the nice lady's office. Ryan only half listened, his mind still processing the conversation. He'd expected to feel worse after talking about his situation so explicitly. Instead, he felt lighter. Like maybe struggling wasn't entirely his fault. Like maybe the problem was bigger than his failures. The following Tuesday, Victoria called him again. I'm meeting with some families tomorrow who are applying for assistance. Would you be willing to sit in? Just listen, maybe offer some insight afterwards. I'm working tomorrow. Evening? Around 7? Ryan thought about his schedule. Noah would need dinner, homework help if Mrs. Patterson had given him anything to practice. But evening was doable if he meal prepped something simple. Yeah, I can do that. The meeting was in a conference room on the hospital's 3rd floor. 4 families showed up, all with similar stories. Medical emergencies, bills they couldn't pay, fear etched into every word. Ryan sat in the corner, feeling like an imposter. What was he supposed to contribute? Victoria introduced him simply as someone who'd been through the assistance program and was helping her improve it. The families barely acknowledged him, too focused on their own crises. A woman named Teresa talked about her husband's heart attack. They had insurance, but the deductible was $10,000. She worked as a cashier. He drove for a rideshare service. They had 3 kids. The numbers didn't work. A man named Marcus explained that his daughter needed surgery for scoliosis. The procedure was mostly covered, but the out-of-pocket costs, the time off work, the travel to specialists, it was adding up to more than he could handle. Ryan listened to story after story, and with each one he recognized himself. The fear, the shame, the calculation of which disaster to prioritize. These weren't people who'd made bad choices. They were people the system had decided didn't matter enough to help. After the families left, Victoria turned to him. Thoughts? They're all me, Ryan said quietly. Different details, same trap. What did you notice that I might have missed? Ryan thought about it. Teresa kept apologizing. Every time she explained her situation, she said sorry, like being poor was something she'd done to you personally. Victoria's expression tightened. I noticed that too. And Marcus, he kept saying he just needed a little help, minimizing it. Like if he asked for too much, you'd say no. Because that's been his experience. Probably. Victoria pulled out her notepad. What would have made them feel less defensive? I don't know. Maybe not making them explain every detail? Not making them prove they deserve help? Ryan struggled to articulate what he meant. It's like, when you're desperate, people want your whole story. They want to judge whether you're desperate enough. And that judgment, even when it's sympathetic, it guts you. So less interrogation, more trust. Yeah. Victoria made several notes, then looked at him with an expression Ryan couldn't quite read. You're good at this. At what? Seeing what matters. Cutting through the bureaucratic bullshit to the actual human problem. Ryan shook his head. I'm just telling you what it feels like. That's exactly what I need. The meetings became regular. Every Saturday afternoon, Ryan brought Noah to Victoria's office. They'd talk about the assistance program, about the families they'd met, about ways to make the system less dehumanizing. Noah colored and played with the ever-expanding collection of toys Victoria kept adding to the corner table. Ryan started to notice things about Victoria. The way she ran on coffee and determination, often skipping meals because she was too focused on work. The way she listened, really listened, when people talked, filing away details most people would forget. The way she got frustrated with bureaucracy, but channeled that frustration into action rather than complaint. After about a month, Ryan worked up the courage to ask her something that had been bothering him. Why do you care so much? Victoria looked up from her laptop. About what? This. All of it. You're the hospital administrator. You could just do your job, collect your paycheck, go home. Instead, you're here on Saturdays redesigning programs that most people don't even know exist. She was quiet for a moment. You want the real answer or the professional answer? Real. Because I'm angry. Victoria's voice was calm, but something sharp lived underneath it. I'm angry that people have to choose between rent and medicine. I'm angry that working full-time isn't enough to survive. I'm angry that the system is designed to fail the people who need it most. And I have the education, the position, the access to actually do something about it. So I do. That's a lot of weight to carry. Yeah, well, the alternative is accepting it. She met his eyes. And I watched my mom accept it for too long. Watched her shrink herself down, apologize for needing help, internalize the message that struggling was her fault. I'm not doing that. And I'm not letting other people do it either if I can help it. Ryan understood that kind of anger. He felt it too, late at night when the bills didn't add up. But he'd never known what to do with it besides swallow it down and keep going. Does it help? He asked. Being angry? It's fuel. Victoria smiled slightly. You can't fix things if you've accepted them. The next week, she asked him something unexpected. How would you feel about talking to the board? Ryan nearly choked on his coffee. What? I'm presenting the expanded assistance program in 3 weeks. They respond better to real stories than statistics. If you could talk about your experience, just 10 minutes, maybe 15, it would help. No way. Ryan, I'm not standing in front of a room full of rich people and begging for scraps. It's not begging, it's educating. It's the same thing. Victoria leaned back in her chair, studying him. You know what I think? I think you're scared they'll see you the way you see yourself. Like you failed somehow, like needing help is shameful. It is shameful. No, it's not. Her voice went hard. The system failing you is shameful. You working your ass off and still barely surviving is shameful. But you needing help? That's just being human. Easy for you to say. Is it? Victoria's eyes flashed. You think I don't know what it's like to be judged? I got my position at 30 years old in a field dominated by men twice my age. Half the board thinks I'm too young, too idealistic, too emotional. They're waiting for me to fail. That's different. How? Ryan didn't have an answer. Look, Victoria said, her voice softening, I'm not going to force you, but I think your voice matters. I think hearing from someone who's actually lived this would change minds. And I think you're braver than you give yourself credit for. I'll think about it, Ryan said, which they both knew meant no. But the conversation stuck with him. That night, after Noah was asleep, Ryan pulled up his laptop and looked at Memorial Hospital's board of directors. 12 people, mostly men, mostly older, all with titles that suggested wealth and power. The kind of people who'd never missed a meal, never chosen between gas and groceries, never sat outside a hospital in the cold. Ryan imagined standing in front of them. Imagined their polite expressions hiding judgment. Imagined failing to articulate what poverty felt like, what fear tasted like, what it meant to gamble with your child's health because you couldn't afford not to. He closed the laptop. The Saturday before Victoria's board presentation, Ryan showed up to her office as usual. Noah had a cold, nothing serious, just the sniffles, so Ryan had dosed him with children's cold medicine and brought extra tissues. Victoria looked exhausted. Papers covered every surface of her desk, and her eyes had the slightly manic quality of someone running on caffeine and deadline pressure. "Rough week?" Ryan asked. "I'm fine." She didn't look fine. "How's Noah?" "Sniffly. He'll live." Noah settled at his table with new coloring books. She'd bought superhero ones this time, after he'd mentioned liking Spider-Man. The attention to detail still caught Ryan off guard. "Do you need to reschedule?" Ryan asked. "You look swamped." "No, I need the distraction." Victoria rubbed her eyes. "The board presentation is in 4 days, and I can't get the narrative right. The data is solid, the budget makes sense, but it's not compelling." "What are you missing?" "The human element. The emotional hook that makes them care." She gestured at her papers. "I've got charts about cost effectiveness and patient outcomes, but what I need is for them to feel why this matters." Ryan was quiet for a moment. Then he heard himself say, "I'll do it." Victoria looked up. "What?" "The presentation. I'll talk to the board." "Ryan, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to, but you're right. My voice matters. Maybe not as much as yours, but—" He trailed off. "Someone should tell them what it's actually like." Victoria stared at him. "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." A smile spread across her face, genuine, relieved, grateful. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. I might freeze up or say the wrong thing or—" "You'll be fine." Victoria's confidence felt almost reckless. "Just tell the truth. That's all you need to do." The next 4 days passed in a blur of anxiety. Victoria helped Ryan prepare, but she insisted he not memorize a speech. "They need to hear you, not a script. Just talk like you're talking to me." The morning of the presentation, Ryan called in sick to the construction site. Mike would be pissed, but this felt important in a way Ryan couldn't fully explain. He dropped Noah at daycare, then sat in his truck outside Memorial Hospital for 20 minutes, trying to calm his racing heart. Inside, Victoria met him in the lobby. "You okay?" she asked. "Nope." "Good. Means you care." She straightened his tie. He'd borrowed one from his neighbor, and it didn't quite fit. "Remember, they're just people. Powerful people, but still just people." "That's not helping," Victoria smiled. "Come on, let's go change some minds." The boardroom was on the top floor, all glass and polished wood, and the kind of furniture that cost more than Ryan's truck. 12 board members sat around an enormous table, some on laptops, some reviewing papers, all projecting the casual authority of people used to making decisions that affected thousands of lives. Ryan's hands were sweating. Victoria began her presentation, walking through the data with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this 100 times. She explained the current program's limitations, the proposed expansion, the projected costs and outcomes. The board listened with varying degrees of attention, occasionally asking questions about budget allocation or implementation timelines. Then Victoria said, "I'd like to introduce Ryan Carter, who's going to share his experience with our financial assistance program." All eyes turned to Ryan. He stood on legs that felt unreliable, walked to the front of the room, and looked at 12 faces he didn't know. For a moment, he couldn't speak. His mind went blank, all the things he'd planned to say evaporating in the face of their attention. Then he thought about Noah asking for pancakes with those fever-bright eyes, about sitting on a concrete bench in 15-degree weather, about Victoria stopping when she didn't have to. 6 weeks ago, Ryan started, his voice rough but steady, I sat outside this hospital with my 4-year-old son, trying to figure out which bill to sacrifice so I could afford his antibiotics. Rent, electricity, medicine, pick 2, because I couldn't afford all 3. The room was absolutely silent. I make $32,000 a year. I work construction, 40 to 50 hours a week. I don't drink, don't gamble, don't waste money. And I was still sitting outside in the cold, calculating whether I could overdraft my bank account without getting evicted. Ryan looked at the faces watching him. Some were sympathetic. Some were carefully neutral. He kept talking. The worst part wasn't the money. It was the shame. Feeling like I'd failed my son because I couldn't afford $80. Feeling like everyone who looked at me saw someone who'd made bad choices. He paused. But I didn't make bad choices. I chose a working-class job. I chose to raise my son alone after my wife died. I chose to keep trying even when it would have been easier to give up. Those aren't bad choices. They're just hard ones. One of the board members, a woman in her 60s, nodded slightly. Your current assistance program has income cutoffs that are too rigid. I make $2,000 more than the limit, so I qualify for nothing. But that $2,000, after taxes, after rent, after basic expenses, it's gone before I even see it. The gap between qualifying for help and not needing help, that's where people like me live. And it's where we drown. Ryan's hands had stopped shaking. The words were coming easier now. Victoria found me that night and helped me. Not because she had to, but because she decided I mattered, and that changed everything. Not just because I got the medicine, though that mattered, but because someone with power chose to see me as a person instead of a problem. He looked at Victoria, who was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. The expanded program she's proposing? It would have saved me months of panic, would have meant I didn't have to choose between my son's health and keeping a roof over his head. Would have meant I wasn't sitting outside in the cold, failing at basic math because I was too scared to think straight. Ryan turned back to the board. I don't know anything about hospital budgets or administrative costs, but I know what desperation feels like. And I know that every person who sits in that gap, making too much for help, not enough to survive, they're making impossible choices every single day. Your program could change that. He stopped talking. The silence stretched. Then one of the board members, an older man in an expensive suit, spoke. Mr. Carter, thank you for sharing that. Can I ask, did you eventually qualify for assistance? Victoria helped me navigate some emergency funds, but under the current system, no, I wouldn't have qualified. And now? How are things? Ryan almost laughed. Still hard, still barely making it. But I'm not sitting outside in the cold anymore, so that's something. Another board member raised her hand slightly. What would have happened if Ms. Hale hadn't helped you that night? Ryan had thought about this question a lot. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe I would have found a way. Maybe I would have overdrafted my account and dealt with the fallout. Or maybe, he stopped, maybe I would have watched my son get worse and hoped the infection didn't spread. I'd like to think I wouldn't have done that, but desperation makes you consider things you never thought you would. The room was silent again. Thank you, Mr. Carter, the chairwoman said quietly. That was very illuminating. Ryan sat down, his hands shaking again now that it was over. Victoria continued her presentation, but Ryan barely heard it. He'd done it. Stood in front of powerful people and told them the truth. Whether it would matter, he didn't know. The meeting ended 30 minutes later. The board would vote next week, the chairwoman announced. Victoria thanked them all and gathered her materials. In the hallway, she turned to Ryan. That was perfect. I almost threw up. Couldn't tell. She was smiling, that genuine smile that made her look younger. Thank you, really. That took courage. Did it help? I don't know yet, but it was truth, and truth always matters. They walked to the elevator together. Ryan felt wrung out, exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical labor. What happens now? He asked. We wait. The board votes next Thursday. And if they say no? Victoria's jaw tightened. Then I go back to the drawing board, find another angle, keep pushing. You don't give up, do you? Not when it matters. The elevator arrived. They stepped inside, and in the enclosed space, Ryan became acutely aware of how close they were standing. Victoria smelled like coffee, and something floral he couldn't identify. She dressed up for the presentation, sharp blazer, heels that added 2 inches to her height, and standing next to her, Ryan felt his borrowed tie and too big suit jacket acutely. The elevator dinged on the 4th floor. Victoria stepped out, then turned back. Ryan? Yeah? What you said in there about choosing to keep trying even when it's hard? That's not nothing. That's everything. Before he could respond, she was gone, disappearing down the hallway toward her office. Ryan stood in the elevator for a moment, then pushed the button for the lobby. His phone buzzed, text from Mrs. Patterson asking him to pick up Noah early. Some kind of lice scare at the daycare. Because of course there was. Ryan sighed and headed for his truck, but for the first time in months, he felt something other than dread. He'd stood up. He'd spoken. He'd mattered, even if just for 15 minutes. Maybe that was enough. The lice scare turned out to be a false alarm, one panicked parent who'd mistaken dandruff for nits. But Mrs. Patterson had already sent half the kids home by the time Ryan arrived. Noah was in good spirits, talking nonstop about a game they'd played involving pirates and treasure. Ryan only half listened, his mind still replaying the boardroom, the faces watching him, the weight of their attention, the moment he'd admitted that desperation made you consider unthinkable things.
"Daddy, you're not listening," Noah complained. "Sorry, buddy. What did you say?" I said, "Can we go see Miss Victoria?" Ryan glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "Not today. She's working." "But I made her a picture." Noah held up a drawing, stick figures that Ryan assumed were supposed to be the three of them, surrounded by what might have been dinosaurs or possibly dogs. "We'll give it to her next time we see her." "When's next time?" Good question. The Saturday meetings had become routine, but Ryan wasn't sure if they'd continue now that the presentation was done. Victoria had gotten what she needed from him. Maybe that was the end of it. The thought bothered him more than it should have. That evening, after Noah was in bed, Ryan's phone rang. Victoria's name on the screen made his pulse quicken. "Hey, I just got off a call with the board chair." Victoria's voice was tight with restrained emotion. "They voted." Ryan's stomach dropped. "And?" "They approved it. Full expansion. $3 million annual budget, revised income guidelines, emergency fast-track system. Everything we asked for." That's incredible. It's because of you." Victoria's voice cracked slightly. "What you said today, about living in the gap, about shame, about desperate choices, it changed the conversation. Margaret Chen told me afterwards that she'd never thought about it that way, that she'd assumed anyone working full-time would be fine. So I helped." "You did more than help. You made them see." A pause. "Ryan, I want to offer you something." "You've already offered me plenty." "A job." Ryan went still. "What?"
"I'm creating a new position. Patient advocate. Someone who helps families navigate the system, connects them to resources, makes sure they don't fall through the cracks. Someone who actually understands what it's like." Victoria spoke quickly, like she was afraid he'd interrupt. "It would be full-time, benefits, real salary. You'd work directly with families going through what you went through." "I don't have any qualifications for that." "You have the only qualification that matters. You've lived it." Ryan's mind raced. A real job. Benefits. Stability. The kind of position that meant Noah's next ear infection wouldn't send them into crisis mode. "How much?" he asked, hating how mercenary it sounded. $45,000 to start. Full health coverage for you and Noah. Sick days, vacation time, retirement matching. $45,000. That was $13,000 more than he made now. That was the difference between drowning and breathing. "Why me?" Ryan asked. "You could hire someone with a social work degree, someone who actually knows what they're doing. Because degrees don't teach empathy. And I've watched you with those families we met with. You see them, not as cases or statistics, but as people. That's rare." Ryan walked to his kitchen window, looking out at the Chicago skyline. Lights glittered in the distance, marking lives he'd never touch, problems he'd never solve. "I'm scared I'll be terrible at it," he admitted. "You will be at first. Everyone is." Victoria's voice softened. "But you'll learn, and you'll help people who need it. That counts for something." "When would I start?" 2 weeks? That gives you time to give notice at the construction site." Ryan thought about Mike's warning. One more chance. He'd been living on borrowed time anyway. "Okay," he said. "Yeah, I'll do it." He could hear Victoria's smile through the phone. "Good. I'll send you the formal offer tomorrow. We can work out details." After she hung up, Ryan stood in his kitchen for a long time, phone in his hand, trying to process what had just happened. A real job, benefits, a future that looked different than the endless grind of barely surviving. He thought about calling someone to share the news, but his contact list was still pathetically short. His brother would find a way to be dismissive. His old friends wouldn't care. The only person who'd understand was Victoria, and he'd just talked to her. Ryan pulled up his messages and typed out a text to Noah's daycare group chat. Great news! Starting a new job in 2 weeks. More stable hours, better pay. Thanks for your patience with me. Mrs. Patterson responded immediately. That's wonderful, Ryan. You deserve good things. The words hit harder than they should have. You deserve good things. When was the last time someone had said that to him? The next morning, Ryan gave his notice at the construction site. Mike took it better than expected. Hospital job, huh? Mike leaned against his desk, arms crossed. That's a hell of a change. Yeah. You gonna be okay sitting in an office all day? You're used to working with your hands. I guess I'll find out. Mike studied him for a moment. You've been off lately, ever since your kid got sick. Whatever happened, it changed something. Someone helped me, Ryan said simply. Now I'm going to help other people. Sounds noble. Sounds necessary. Mike nodded slowly. Well, good luck. You were a decent worker when you showed up. Hope the new gig treats you better. The 2 weeks passed in a strange liminal space. Ryan finished out his shifts at the construction site, his body going through familiar motions while his mind stayed focused on what came next. Victoria sent him the formal job offer. $45,000, full benefits, start date March 1st. He signed it in his truck during lunch break, hands shaking slightly as he wrote his name. Noah took the news with the adaptability of a 4-year-old who didn't fully understand what jobs were. Does this mean you'll be home more? He asked. Yeah, buddy, regular hours. I'll pick you up from daycare every day at the same time. And we can see Miss Victoria? I'll be working with her, so yeah. Noah's face lit up. Can I come to work with you sometimes? Probably not, but we'll see. The Saturday before Ryan's start date, he met Victoria at her office one last time as a volunteer. Noah was at a birthday party, one of his daycare friends, so it was just the two of them. Victoria had paperwork spread across her desk, orientation materials, and policy manuals. This is overwhelming, Ryan said, flipping through a binder labeled Patient Advocacy Protocols. You don't need to memorize it. Just know where to look when you need information. Victoria handed him a folder. This is your caseload to start. 5 families, all in different stages of the assistance process. I want you to meet with each of them, see what they need, connect them to resources. Ryan opened the folder. Names, brief summaries of situations. A single mother with twins who needed heart surgery. An elderly couple dealing with Alzheimer's care costs. A veteran struggling with medical debt from a service-related injury. These are real people, Ryan said, the weight of it settling over him. Yeah, and they're counting on you to help them navigate a system designed to confuse them. No pressure. Victoria smiled. You'll be fine. And I'll be right down the hall if you need anything. What if I make a mistake? What if I give someone wrong information or miss something important? Then you fix it. You apologize. You correct it. You learn. She leaned back in her chair. Ryan, you're not going to be perfect at this. Nobody is. But you're going to care, and you're going to try, and that's more than most people in this system do. They spent the next hour going over protocols. How to access the financial assistance database. Who to call for emergency funding approval. How to escalate cases that needed immediate attention. Ryan's head spun with information, but Victoria remained patient, explaining things multiple times when needed. Around noon, she glanced at her watch. Have you eaten? Not yet. Me neither. Want to grab lunch? They ended up at a diner 2 blocks from the hospital, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like it had been sitting since morning. Victoria ordered a salad. Ryan got a burger. You come here a lot? Ryan asked, noticing how the waitress had greeted Victoria by name. Too much. It's close and fast. Victoria poured sugar into her coffee. Not exactly fine dining, but it works. Better than what I usually eat. Which is? Whatever's cheapest. Ryan shrugged. Lot of pasta. Lot of canned soup. Noah's picky, so I end up making him chicken nuggets and mac and cheese while I eat whatever's left over. Victoria's expression shifted. When's the last time you ate a meal you actually enjoyed? Ryan had to think about it. Michelle used to cook. Real cooking, not just heating things up. She made this pot roast that... He stopped. Sorry, you don't want to hear about that. I do, actually. So Ryan told her about Michelle's pot roast, about Sunday dinners that filled their apartment with the smell of comfort, about the way she'd dance in the kitchen while cooking, terrible off-key singing that made Noah giggle even as a baby. She sounds wonderful, Victoria said quietly. She was. Ryan stared at his coffee. I still can't believe she's gone sometimes. Like I'll come home and expect her to be there, and then I remember. How long were you together? 8 years, married for 5. Ryan smiled slightly. We met at a bar. She was there with friends. I was there avoiding my brother's birthday party. We talked for 3 hours about absolutely nothing important. Love at first sight? Love at first conversation. Ryan's smile faded. The cancer came out of nowhere. One day she was fine, the next day she was dying. 18 months from diagnosis to funeral. Victoria reached across the table and squeezed his hand briefly. The gesture was so unexpected that Ryan almost pulled away, but her hand was warm, and the contact felt grounding. I'm sorry, she said. Yeah, me too. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Ryan found himself studying Victoria when she wasn't looking, the way she pushed her salad around without eating much, the shadows under her eyes that suggested she wasn't sleeping enough, the constant checking of her phone like she was waiting for an emergency. Can I ask you something? Ryan said finally. Sure. Do you have a life outside the hospital? Victoria blinked. What do you mean? I mean, every time I see you, you're working. Weekends, evenings, lunch breaks. Do you ever just stop? I take time off. When's the last time? She thought about it. I went to my mom's for Christmas. That was 3 months ago. I took a half day last month. Victoria. She set down her fork. What do you want me to say? That I work too much? I know I do. But the work matters, and there's always more to do. And if I stop, then who's going to... Someone else, Ryan interrupted. Someone else will do it, or it won't get done. But you can't save everyone. I can try. At what cost? Victoria's jaw tightened. Says the guy who worked construction with a fever because he couldn't afford to miss a day. That's different. How? Ryan didn't have a good answer. They were both running themselves into the ground, just for different reasons. Maybe we're both bad at taking care of ourselves, he said finally. Maybe. Victoria's expression softened. But at least now you'll have health insurance. So when you inevitably get sick from overwork, you can actually see a doctor. Same goes for you. I'm the hospital administrator. I can see a doctor whenever I want. But do you? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. They finished lunch and walked back to the hospital together. The March afternoon was cold but sunny, the kind of day that promised spring might eventually arrive. Victoria walked quickly, always in motion, but Ryan noticed she slowed her pace to match his. I'm nervous about Monday, Ryan admitted. Good nervous or bad nervous? Both. He shoved his hands in his pockets. What if I'm terrible at this? What if those families take one look at me and think, this guy can barely manage his own life, how's he supposed to help me? They won't think that. You don't know that. Victoria stopped walking and turned to face him. Ryan, you know what those families will see when they meet you? Someone who gets it, someone who's not going to judge them or make them feel small, someone who sat where they're sitting and survived. She held his gaze. That's worth more than any degree. Ryan wanted to believe her, wanted to trust that his experience counted for something beyond just pain. Thank you, he said, for all of this. The job, the help, everything. Stop thanking me. I'm serious. I know, and I'm seriously telling you to stop. Victoria started walking again. You earned this. You spoke up. You helped me design a better program. You stood in front of the board and made them care. This isn't charity. It's recognition. They reached the hospital entrance. Victoria pulled out her phone to check messages, her expression immediately tightening. Problem? Ryan asked. Always. She typed out a quick response. Budget meeting got moved up. I need to prep. On a Saturday? Like you said, I don't stop. She pocketed her phone. I'll see you Monday morning. 8 o'clock, 4th floor. Don't be late. Yes, ma'am. Victoria smiled and headed inside. Ryan watched her go, then walked to his truck. His phone buzzed.
text from the birthday party host saying Noah was ready for pickup. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of nervous energy. Ryan cleaned his apartment, bought new clothes that looked more professional than his construction gear, practiced introducing himself in the bathroom mirror. Noah found him doing this and asked why he was talking to himself. "Just getting ready for my new job, buddy." "Are you scared?" The question caught Ryan off guard. "A little. Is that okay?" "Mommy used to say being scared means you're doing something important." Ryan's chest tightened. She was right. Monday morning arrived too quickly. Ryan dropped Noah at daycare, drove to Memorial Hospital, and sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes doing breathing exercises Victoria had mentioned once. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Simple. Grounding. He could do this. The fourth floor felt different knowing it was his workplace now. The receptionist, her name was Amanda, greeted him with a warm smile. "Mr. Carter, welcome aboard. Victoria's waiting for you in her office." Victoria looked up when he knocked, and something in her expression eased when she saw him. "You came. Did you think I wouldn't?" "Part of me worried you'd panic and ghost." She stood and grabbed a folder. "Ready for the grand tour?" She showed him his office. Small, windowless, but his own space. A desk, computer, filing cabinet, 2 chairs for meeting with families. "It's not much," Victoria said. "It's perfect." Ryan set his bag down, feeling surreal. An office. His office. Victoria introduced him to the staff he'd be working with. Social workers, financial counselors, case managers. Everyone was friendly but busy, their smiles professional and brief. Ryan tried to remember names and failed immediately. By lunchtime, his head was spinning with information. Insurance codes, funding channels, escalation protocols. Victoria had given him a crash course in hospital bureaucracy, and Ryan felt like he'd learned a new language without understanding the grammar. "Overwhelmed?" Victoria asked, finding him in his office staring at his computer screen. "Completely." "Good. Means you're paying attention." She set a file on his desk. "This is your first case, Teresa Rodriguez. You met her at one of our group sessions. Husband had the heart attack?" Ryan remembered. The woman who kept apologizing. "What do I do?" "Call her. Set up a meeting. Listen to her situation. Connect her to appropriate resources." Victoria made it sound simple. "You'll figure it out as you go." After she left, Ryan stared at the file. Teresa's contact information was on the first page. He picked up his phone 3 times before actually dialing. "Hello?" Her voice was cautious. "Mrs. Rodriguez, this is Ryan Carter from Memorial Hospital. I'm a patient advocate, and I wanted to schedule a time to meet with you about your assistance application." "Is something wrong?" "No, nothing's wrong. I'm here to help you navigate the process." "Oh." She sounded uncertain. "When did you want to meet?" They scheduled a time for Wednesday afternoon. After Ryan hung up, he sat back in his chair, heart pounding like he'd just run a marathon. One call down, dozens more to go. The first week was brutal. Ryan spent his days meeting with families, learning systems, making mistakes, and fixing them. He called the wrong department 3 times trying to get emergency funding approval. He accidentally sent a family to the wrong building for their appointment. He stayed late every night trying to catch up on paperwork. But he also helped. He got Teresa's husband enrolled in a cardiac rehab program with sliding scale fees. He connected the elderly couple to Alzheimer's support resources and long-term care planning. He sat with a scared mother while she cried about her daughter's surgery costs, and then he helped her apply for a medical grant she didn't know existed. By Friday, Ryan was exhausted. He arrived home to find Noah already fed and bathed. Mrs. Patterson had kept him late and handled dinner, refusing payment because "you're doing important work." "How was your first week?" she asked. "Hard, good, confusing." Ryan rubbed his face. "I don't know yet." "You'll figure it out. You always do." That night, after Noah was asleep, Victoria texted him, "How are you holding up?" "Surviving," Ryan typed back. "Barely. That's all week 1 requires. Next week will be easier." "You promise?" "No, but you'll be better at it." Ryan smiled at his phone. Then he typed, "Thank you for believing I could do this." Her response came quickly, "Thank you for proving me right." The second week was marginally less chaotic. Ryan started to understand the systems, to know who to call for what. He developed a rhythm, mornings for meetings, afternoons for paperwork, evenings for follow-up calls.
He learned that some families needed detailed explanations, while others just needed someone to cut through the bureaucracy and tell them what to do next. He also learned that the work was emotionally exhausting in ways construction had never been. Every story was a variation of his own, people trying their best and still failing because the system was rigged against them. Single mothers choosing between food and medicine. Elderly couples watching their savings evaporate. Veterans drowning in medical debt from injuries sustained serving their country. Ryan came home most nights emotionally wrung out, barely able to engage with Noah's cheerful chattering. But the work mattered. He could see it in the relief on people's faces when he told them he'd found funding for their bills. Could hear it in their voices when they called to say thank you. 3 weeks in, Victoria stopped by his office. "How are your cases going?" Ryan pulled up his tracking sheet. "Teresa's husband starts cardiac rehab next week. The Johnsons got approved for Alzheimer's care assistance. Marcus's daughter's surgery is scheduled, and I got the out-of-pocket costs reduced by 60%. That's excellent work. I'm just connecting them to stuff that already exists." "That's the job." Victoria leaned against his doorframe. "Most people don't know these resources exist. You're making them accessible. That's everything." Ryan studied her. She looked tired, more tired than usual, which was saying something. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Fine. Why?" "You look exhausted." "Pot, meet kettle." "I'm serious, Victoria." She sighed. "Budget committee is pushing back on the program expansion. They're saying the costs are too high. We're serving too many people. We need to tighten the eligibility requirements." "After everything we did to get it approved?" "Welcome to nonprofit administration. Every victory is temporary." She rubbed her temples. "I have to present revised numbers next week, prove we're getting results that justify the cost." "What do you need from me?" "Keep doing what you're doing. Document everything. Patient outcomes, cost savings, success stories. I need data to show the board this is working." "You'll have it." Victoria smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I know I will." She left, and Ryan sat in his office feeling the weight of responsibility settle heavier. It wasn't enough to help people. He had to prove they were worth helping, had to quantify compassion in spreadsheets and statistics. The system was exhausting. That weekend, Ryan took Noah to the park, their first real outing since he'd started the new job. Noah ran toward the playground with the boundless energy of a kid who'd been cooped up too long. Ryan sat on a bench and watched him play, feeling the March sun on his face. His phone buzzed. Text from Victoria. "Sorry to bother you on the weekend, but can you send me your case notes from the Rodriguez family? Need them for the budget presentation." Ryan sent the files, then added, "You working all weekend again?" "Just putting together this presentation. It's important." "So is resting." Says the guy at the park on a Saturday instead of sleeping. "I'm with Noah. That's different." "Is it?" Ryan looked at his phone, then typed. "You should come to the park. Get some air." He expected her to decline. Expected some professional response about deadlines and responsibilities. Instead, she wrote, "Which park?" 20 minutes later, Victoria appeared at the edge of the playground, looking out of place in jeans and a jacket that probably cost more than Ryan's rent. Noah spotted her immediately and ran over. "Miss Victoria, are you coming to play?" "I'm coming to say hi." She smiled at him, then looked at Ryan. "I needed a break anyway." They sat on the bench together, watching Noah climb the jungle gym with fearless confidence. "He's gotten bigger," Victoria observed. "Kids do that." Ryan glanced at her. "When's the last time you were at a park?" "I don't know. Years, maybe." "That's sad." "That's life." They sat in silence for a while. Noah made friends with another kid, and they started an elaborate game involving dinosaurs and aliens. Ryan half watched, mostly aware of Victoria beside him. "Can I ask you something?" Victoria said finally. "Sure." "Do you regret it, taking the job?" Ryan turned to look at her. "Why would I regret it?" "Because it's hard. Because you're dealing with everyone else's trauma on top of your own. Because the system is designed to break people down, and now you're inside it." "I don't regret it," Ryan said honestly. "It's hard, yeah. But it's the first time since Michelle died that I feel like I'm doing something that matters." Construction mattered. Construction paid bills. This is different. He watched Noah swing from the monkey bars. Last week, a woman called to tell me her son's surgery was scheduled. She was crying, thanking me over and over. And I realized I helped make that happen. That kid's getting the medical care he needs because I made some phone calls and filled out some forms. That's what I hoped you'd feel. Do you still feel it? After years of doing this? Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Sometimes I just feel angry that any of this is necessary, that we live in a country where people have to beg for medical care, where helping the sick is considered controversial. She looked at him. But then I meet someone like you, and I remember why I started. Someone like me? Someone who gives a shit. Someone who's not in it for the resume line or the paycheck, but because they actually want to help. Ryan felt his face warm. I'm not that special. You are to the families you're helping. Noah ran over, breathless and happy. Daddy, can we get ice cream? Ryan checked his watch. It's barely 2 o'clock. Please, Miss Victoria can come too. Victoria laughed. I should get back to work. Please, Noah repeated, turning his pleading eyes on her. She looked at Ryan, who shrugged. Ice cream's not the worst idea. They ended up at a small shop 2 blocks away, Noah getting chocolate with rainbow sprinkles while the adults ordered coffee. They sat at a tiny table by the window, Noah chattering about the playground and his new friend who liked dinosaurs too. Victoria smiled at him, really smiled, and Ryan saw what she looked like when she wasn't carrying the weight of the world. Younger, lighter, almost carefree. You're good with him, Ryan said quietly. He's easy to be good with. He's a sweet kid. He likes you. The feeling's mutual. They stayed until Noah had finished his ice cream and started getting restless. Outside, the March afternoon had turned colder, wind whipping through the streets. Thank you for this, Victoria said. I needed it more than I realized. You're allowed to have a life, you know, outside of saving the hospital's soul. I'll keep that in mind. She hesitated, then added, maybe we could do this again sometime. The park, ice cream, normal human things. We'd like that, Ryan said, and meant it. Victoria smiled and headed toward her car. Ryan watched her go, Noah's hand in his, and felt something shift in his chest. Something complicated and uncertain and not entirely unwelcome, but he pushed it down. Victoria was his boss. His friend, maybe. Nothing more. Still, as he drove home with Noah dozing in the back seat, Ryan found himself replaying the afternoon. The way Victoria had laughed at Noah's stories, the way the sun had caught her hair, the way she'd seemed almost relaxed for the first time since he'd met her. He was in trouble, Ryan realized. The kind of trouble that started with noticing someone and ended with wanting things that were probably impossible. But for now, he just drove home, grateful for the afternoon, for the job, for the slow rebuild of a life that had once felt irreparably broken. Maybe that was enough. The trouble Ryan had anticipated arrived gradually, in small moments that accumulated like snow before an avalanche. A text from Victoria at midnight asking if he'd seen the latest case file. Coffee runs that turned into hour-long conversations about everything except work. The way his heart kicked up when he saw her name on his phone. He tried to ignore it, focused on his caseload, on Noah, on rebuilding a life that didn't revolve around barely surviving. But Victoria kept showing up, in his office with questions, at the park with Noah, in his thoughts when he should have been sleeping. 2 months into the job, Ryan sat across from a young couple in his office, listening to them explain why they couldn't afford their newborn's NICU bills. The husband worked retail. The wife was a teacher's aide. Their baby had been born 6 weeks early and needed another month of intensive care. We're trying to do everything right, the wife said, tears streaming down her face. We both work. We don't spend money on anything extra, but the bills just keep coming. Ryan saw himself in their fear, heard his own voice in their apologies for needing help. You're not doing anything wrong, he said quietly. The system is broken. You're just caught in it. He helped them apply for 3 different assistance programs, connected them to a nonprofit that specialized in NICU costs, and got them enrolled in an emergency payment plan that wouldn't destroy their credit. By the time they left, the wife had stopped crying, and the husband's shoulders had lost some of their tension. Victoria appeared in his doorway 10 minutes later. I heard that go well. How did you? I was walking past. The walls are thin. She stepped inside. You told them the system was broken. Because it is. I know. But most patient advocates don't say that out loud. They blame budget constraints or insurance complications. Safe, neutral language. I'm not most patient advocates. Victoria smiled. No, you're not. They looked at each other for a moment too long. Ryan felt the air in the room shift, become charged with something he didn't want to name. I should get back to work, he said. Right, yeah. Victoria didn't move. Actually, I came to ask if you're free Thursday night. There's a fundraiser for the Expanded Assistance Program. Board members, donors, community leaders. I'd like you to be there. Why? Because you're the face of what we're trying to do. Real person, real story, real impact. She paused. And because I'd like you there. That last part landed differently. Ryan heard the subtext, the thing neither of them was saying. I don't have anything to wear to a fundraiser, he said. It's business casual, not black tie. You'll be fine. What about Noah? Bring him. There'll be other kids there. We've got activities set up. Ryan wanted to say no, wanted to maintain the professional distance that was already crumbling, but he heard himself say, okay, yeah, we'll come. Thursday arrived faster than Ryan wanted. He picked up Noah from daycare early, drove home, and spent 20 minutes trying to find clothes that looked presentable. His nicest shirt had a small stain near the collar. His dress pants were too big. He'd lost weight since Michelle died and never replaced them. Noah watched him from the doorway. Why are you changing clothes so much? We're going to a fancy party. With Miss Victoria? Yeah, buddy. Are you nervous? A little. It's okay to be nervous. Miss Victoria will be there. Out of the mouths of children. Ryan smiled despite himself. You're right, she will. The fundraiser was at a hotel downtown, ballroom with chandeliers and waiters carrying trays of food Ryan couldn't pronounce. Noah's eyes went wide when they walked in. Daddy, this is like a castle. Kind of, yeah. Victoria found them within minutes, appearing in a dress that made Ryan forget how to breathe. Dark blue, simple, but elegant. The kind of thing that probably cost more than his monthly rent. You came, she said, and her smile was genuine relief. You invited us. People say yes and don't show up all the time. She crouched down to Noah's level. Hey, buddy, want to see where the kids are hanging out? Noah nodded enthusiastically. Victoria led them to a side room where a handful of children were engaged in various activities, coloring, building blocks, a video game set up in the corner. Noah immediately gravitated toward the blocks. He'll be fine, Victoria said. There are 2 volunteers supervising. Back in the main ballroom, Ryan felt immediately out of place. Everyone else seemed to know each other, moving through conversations with practiced ease. Victoria stayed close, introducing him to board members and donors with a simple explanation. This is Ryan Carter, our new patient advocate. He's doing incredible work with struggling families. People smiled, shook his hand, said polite things. Ryan smiled back and tried not to feel like an exhibit. An older man in an expensive suit cornered them by the bar. So you're the one Victoria's been talking about, the construction worker turned advocate. That's me, Ryan said. Interesting career change. What made you decide to switch? Ryan glanced at Victoria, who gave him a small, encouraging nod. I needed help once, Ryan said. Victoria provided it. Now I'm helping other people. Paying it forward, I like that. The man, whose name Ryan had already forgotten, sipped his drink. And you find the work rewarding? I find it necessary. The man's eyebrows rose. That's a diplomatic answer. It's an honest one. Ryan felt Victoria's hand brush against his arm, a warning or support. He wasn't sure. The people I help shouldn't need me. They work full-time, they do everything right, and they're still one emergency away from losing everything. That's not a system that works. Ryan has strong opinions about healthcare access, Victoria said smoothly. It's why he's so effective at his job. The man nodded thoughtfully and moved on. Victoria exhaled. Sorry, Ryan said. I probably shouldn't have. No, that was perfect. Honest without being confrontational. She smiled. They'll maybe tone it down slightly for the next 3 hours. They circulated through the room, Victoria stopping to talk with various donors and stakeholders. Ryan stayed quiet mostly, observing the careful dance of fundraising. Everyone wanted to help, but only if it made them look good. Everyone cared, but only to a point. Around 8, Victoria was pulled into a conversation with the board chair, leaving Ryan alone by the windows overlooking the city. Chicago stretched out below, lights glittering in the darkness. You look like you'd rather be anywhere else. Ryan turned to find a woman in her 50s, kind eyes and a no-nonsense expression. That obvious? He asked. Only to someone who feels the same way. She extended her hand. Margaret Chen, I'm on the hospital board. Ryan shook it, remembering the name. You're the one who said my presentation changed your perspective. Victoria told you that? She mentioned it. Margaret smiled. Your presentation did change things, made us realize we'd been looking at poverty as a personal failure rather than a systemic problem. She paused. How's the job going? Hard. Good. Necessary. That seems to be your answer to everything. Ryan couldn't help but smile. It's true. Victoria speaks very highly of you, says you're the best hire she's made. She's being generous. She's being accurate. Margaret studied him. You care about her. The observation was so direct that Ryan didn't know how to respond. She's my boss, he said finally. That's not what I asked. Ryan looked across the room to where Victoria was deep in conversation, animated and passionate about whatever point she was making. Yeah, he admitted quietly. I care about her. Does she know? I don't know. Probably not. You should tell her. That's a terrible idea. Why? Because she's your boss? Because it's complicated? Margaret's expression softened. Life is complicated. That's not a reason to avoid connection. Before Ryan could respond, Noah appeared, tugging at his sleeve. Daddy, I'm tired. Ryan checked his watch, almost 9. Way past Noah's bedtime. Okay, buddy, let's say goodbye to Miss Victoria and head home. They found Victoria still talking to the board chair. She looked up when they approached, her expression shifting from professional to genuinely pleased. Leaving already? Someone's past his bedtime, Ryan said, gesturing to Noah, who was rubbing his eyes. Of course. Victoria crouched down. Did you have fun? Noah nodded sleepily. The blocks were good. I'm glad. She stood looking at Ryan. Thank you for coming. It meant a lot. Happy to help. They looked at each other for a moment, the crowded ballroom fading into background noise. Ryan felt Margaret's words echoing in his head. You should tell her. Not here. Not now. I'll see you Monday, he said instead. Monday, Victoria agreed. In the car, Noah fell asleep immediately, leaving Ryan alone with his thoughts. The city blurred past, familiar streets leading home. He thought about Victoria in that blue dress, about the way she'd stayed close to him all evening, about Margaret's knowing smile. This was dangerous territory. Victoria was his boss, his friend, the person who'd saved him when he needed it most. Complicating that with feelings seemed reckless. But the feelings were there anyway, stubborn and growing. The following week passed in a haze of work and careful avoidance. Ryan focused on his cases, helping a veteran navigate VA benefits and medical debt, connecting a single mother to childcare assistance so she could work full-time. The work was exhausting but meaningful, each small victory a reminder that he was making a difference. Victoria appeared in his office Friday afternoon. Got a minute? Sure. She closed the door behind her, which immediately made Ryan nervous. Victoria never closed his office door. The budget committee approved full funding for next fiscal year, she said. The program's expanding again. We're adding 2 more patient advocates and doubling the emergency assistance fund. That's incredible. It's because of you, your case outcomes, your patient satisfaction scores, the way you've documented everything. Victoria leaned against his desk. You've proven the program works. We proved it together. Still can't take a compliment, can you? Ryan smiled. Working on it. Victoria was quiet for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then she said, I need to tell you something. Ryan's stomach dropped. Okay. This is going to sound unprofessional. Probably is unprofessional, but I need to say it anyway. She took a breath. I have feelings for you, real feelings. Not just respect or friendship or gratitude, but actual romantic feelings. And I know that's complicated because I'm your boss and we work together and there are policies about this kind of thing, but I couldn't keep pretending I don't. I have feelings for you too, Ryan interrupted. Victoria stopped mid-sentence. What? I've had feelings for you since the park. Maybe before that. I've been trying to ignore them because, like you said, it's complicated and you're my boss. And I didn't want to mess up the best thing that's happened to me in years. Ryan stood, moving closer to her. But yeah, I care about you. A lot. They stared at each other. Ryan could hear his heartbeat, loud in the quiet office. So what do we do? Victoria asked. I have no idea. There are policies, HR guidelines about supervisor-employee relationships. We'd have to disclose it, and I might have to recuse myself from your performance reviews and… Victoria. What? Do you want to go to dinner with me? She blinked. Like a date? Yeah, like a date. When? Tomorrow night. I'll find a babysitter for Noah, we'll go somewhere nice, and we'll figure out the complicated parts later. Victoria's face broke into a smile that made Ryan's chest tight. Okay, yes, I'd like that. They stood there grinning at each other like idiots until someone knocked on Ryan's door. They jumped apart, suddenly aware of how close they'd been standing. Come in, Ryan called. It was one of the social workers with a question about a case. Victoria excused herself, but not before giving Ryan a look that promised continuation of the conversation. Ryan sat back down at his desk, heart still racing, and tried to focus on work. Failed completely. Saturday night arrived with a mix of excitement and terror. Ryan had found a babysitter through Mrs. Patterson, her niece, a responsible college student who seemed unfazed by Noah's energy. He'd bought a new shirt, gotten a haircut, and spent 20 minutes in front of the bathroom mirror trying to calm his nerves. You look nice, Daddy, Noah said, watching from the doorway. Thanks, buddy. Are you going on a date with Miss Victoria? Ryan hesitated. Yeah, is that okay with you? Noah thought about it seriously. Will she still come to the park with us? I think so. Then it's okay. Simple as that. Leave it to a 4-year-old to cut through the complexity. Ryan picked Victoria up at her apartment, a place he'd never been, surprisingly nice without being ostentatious. She answered the door in jeans and a sweater, casual in a way he'd rarely seen. I didn't know where we were going, she said, so I went with comfortable. Perfect. Ryan had specifically chosen a small Italian place. Good food, not too fancy, no pressure. Dinner was easy in a way Ryan hadn't expected. They talked about everything except work. Victoria's family, Ryan's memories of Michelle, their respective terrible dating histories. Victoria had dated a lawyer for 2 years who'd cheated on her with a paralegal. Ryan had gone on exactly 3 dates since Michelle died, all of them disasters. Why were they disasters? Victoria asked. Because I spent the whole time comparing them to Michelle and feeling guilty for being there at all. Ryan poked at his pasta. It felt like cheating, even though she's been gone 2 years. Do you feel that way now? Ryan looked at Victoria, really looked at her. The way the candlelight caught her eyes, the easy smile, the way she listened like his words actually mattered. No, he said honestly. This feels different. Different how? Like moving forward instead of trying to recreate the past. Victoria reached across the table and took his hand. Michelle would want you to be happy. I know, doesn't make it less complicated. Nothing worth doing is simple. They finished dinner and walked through downtown Chicago, the May evening warm enough that Victoria didn't need a jacket. Their hands found each other naturally, fingers intertwining like they'd done this 100 times before. I was terrified to tell you, Victoria admitted. Thought you'd think I was taking advantage. Boss pursuing employee, all the power dynamics. You weren't pursuing me. We were finding each other. That's a romantic way to put it. I'm full of surprises. Victoria laughed, the sound genuine and unguarded. They ended up at Millennium Park, sitting on a bench near the Bean, watching tourists take photos in the fading light. Can I ask you something? Ryan said. Anything. Why did you really stop that night? At the hospital when you saw me and Noah? Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, I almost didn't. I was exhausted, running late, focused on getting inside. But then I saw you, this man holding his kid, looking absolutely defeated, and it stopped me in my tracks. She squeezed his hand. My mom used to have this expression on really bad days. This kind of quiet desperation, like she was holding everything together by sheer will, and one more thing would break her. You had that same look. So you helped because I reminded you of your mom? I helped because I knew what happened if no one stopped. I'd watched my mom sit in that desperation alone too many times. I couldn't walk past it again. Ryan pulled her closer, and she rested her head on his shoulder. They sat like that for a while, watching the city move around them. "I don't know how to do this," Ryan said eventually. "Do what? Move on. Be happy. Let someone new in." He struggled to find words. "Michelle was my whole world. When she died, I thought that part of my life was over, that I'd just focus on Noah and work and surviving. And now? Now I'm sitting here with you, and it feels like maybe there's more. Like maybe surviving isn't the only option." Victoria lifted her head to look at him. "That terrifies you." "Completely. Me too." She smiled slightly. "But I'm willing to be terrified if you are." Ryan kissed her then, soft and tentative, a question more than a statement. Victoria kissed him back, and for the first time in 2 years, Ryan felt something other than grief when he thought about the future. They talked until the park started closing, then walked back to Ryan's truck. He drove Victoria home, both of them quiet but comfortable. "Thank you for tonight," Victoria said as they stood outside her building. "Thank you for taking a chance on me. On this." "It's not a chance. It's a choice." She kissed him again, longer this time. "I'll see you Monday?" "Monday," Ryan agreed. He drove home feeling lighter than he had in years. The babysitter reported that Noah had been perfect, going to bed without complaint. Ryan paid her, checked on his sleeping son, and then sat in his living room just processing. He was dating Victoria, his boss, his friend, the woman who'd saved him. It was complicated and risky, and probably a terrible idea professionally. It was also the best thing he'd felt in longer than he could remember. The next few months unfolded with surprising ease. They kept their relationship quiet at work, not secret, but private. HR was notified per policy, and Victoria recused herself from Ryan's performance reviews. But outside the office, they built something real. Victoria came to Noah's preschool graduation, sitting in the audience and cheering louder than anyone when he walked across the stage. Ryan met Victoria's mother, a warm woman who gripped his hand and said, "She talks about you constantly." They had dinners together, the three of them, Victoria helping Noah with puzzles while Ryan cooked. Noah adored her, would ask when Miss Victoria was coming over, would save drawings to show her, would insist she read him bedtime stories when she was there. "He's getting attached," Ryan said one night after Noah was asleep. "Is that a problem?" Victoria asked. "I don't know. What if this doesn't work out? What if—" "Ryan," she took his face in her hands. "Stop catastrophizing. We're good. Noah's good. This is good. I just don't want him to get hurt." "Neither do I. Which is why I'm not going anywhere." The words settled something in Ryan's chest he hadn't realized was still anxious. 8 months after that first date, Victoria proposed expanding Ryan's role. Not romantically, professionally. "I want you to head the patient advocacy department," she said over coffee in her office. 3 advocates reporting to you, full oversight of the program, seat at leadership meetings. Ryan stared at her. "That's a huge promotion." "You've earned it. Your case outcomes are the best we've seen. Patients trust you. Your team respects you. It makes sense. People will say you're promoting me because we're together. Let them say it. Your work speaks for itself." Victoria leaned back in her chair. "But I need to know you want it. This isn't about us. It's about whether you're ready to lead." Ryan thought about the scared, desperate man who'd sat outside this hospital less than a year ago. Thought about how far he'd come, how much he'd learned, how many people he'd helped. "Yeah," he said, "I want it." The promotion came with more responsibility, longer hours, harder decisions. But it also came with the ability to shape the program, to implement changes he'd been advocating for, to help on a larger scale. Ryan hired 2 more advocates, trained them personally, and watched them help families the way he'd been helped. The program grew, serving more people, saving more lives, proving that compassion could exist inside a system designed to discourage it. A year and a half after that cold January night, Memorial Hospital held a gala celebrating the success of the expanded assistance program. Ryan stood on stage with Victoria, presenting the outcomes to a room full of donors and board members. "We've served over 3,000 families this year," Victoria announced, "provided over $4 million in assistance, connected people to resources they didn't know existed, and we've done it because one person decided to stop and help." She looked at Ryan, who felt his face warm under the attention. "Ryan Carter came to us as a patient who couldn't afford his son's antibiotics. Now he leads our patient advocacy department. He's proof that investing in people, believing in people, creates change that ripples outward. The room applauded. Ryan saw Teresa Rodriguez in the audience, her husband beside her, both of them smiling. Saw Marcus and his daughter, the surgery successful, their lives rebuilt. Saw dozens of families he'd helped, their faces familiar and grateful. Later, after the speeches and dinner and socializing, Ryan found Victoria on the balcony overlooking the city. "You did good tonight," he said. "We did good." She leaned into him. "I couldn't have built this without you."
Sure you could have. You're relentless.
"But I wouldn't have wanted to." She turned to face him. "This program exists because someone helped me when I needed it. And now it's helping thousands because someone helped you. That's how it's supposed to work." Ryan kissed her forehead. Michelle used to say kindness was contagious, that if you helped one person, they'd help another, and it would spread. She was right. Yeah, she usually was. They stood there as the city sparkled below them, two people who'd found each other in the space between desperation and hope, who'd built something meaningful from shared pain and stubborn determination. "Marry me," Ryan said suddenly. Victoria pulled back to look at him. "What?" "Marry me. Not now, not immediately, but eventually. When we're ready. When Noah's ready. But I want you to know that's where this is heading for me. That's possibly the least romantic proposal I've ever heard. I'm working on my delivery." Victoria laughed, tears gathering in her eyes. "Yes, eventually. When we're ready." They kissed as the city lights flickered around them, as the gala continued inside, as their future opened up before them with possibility. 2 years later, they got married in a small ceremony at the hospital chapel. Noah was the ring bearer, taking his job incredibly seriously. Victoria's mother cried. Ryan's brother showed up and actually seemed happy for him. The hospital staff filled the pews, cheering when they were pronounced married. Ryan Carter, who'd once sat outside in the cold with his sick son and $23 in his wallet, now had a career that mattered, a son who was thriving, and a wife who'd chosen him when he couldn't choose himself. Victoria Hale, who dedicated her life to fixing a broken system, had found someone who understood why she couldn't stop fighting, who fought beside her, who made her believe that change was possible one person at a time. Together, they continued expanding the assistance program, helping families navigate impossible situations, proving that sometimes all someone needs is for one person to stop and see them. The program grew every year. More advocates, more funding, more families helped. Other hospitals started copying their model. The system was still broken, still designed to fail the people who needed it most. But there were pockets of resistance now, places where compassion won. On their 3rd anniversary, Ryan and Victoria stood in the same spot where they'd first met, the concrete bench outside Memorial Hospital's main entrance. It was January again, cold and bitter, and they'd come full circle. "You know what's weird?" Ryan said. "I'm grateful it happened. All of it. The desperation, the fear, sitting out here in the cold. Because it led to this." "That's trauma reframing," Victoria said. "Very therapeutic. Or it's just the truth." He pulled her closer against the cold. "If Noah hadn't gotten sick, if I hadn't been sitting here, if you hadn't stopped, none of this happens. I'd still be barely surviving, you'd still be fighting alone, and thousands of families wouldn't have gotten help." Butterfly effect. Or proof that one moment of kindness can change everything. A car pulled up to the entrance. A woman got out, holding a small child, her face showing that particular strain of desperation Ryan remembered so well. She looked at the hospital entrance, then at the parking lot, clearly calculating something. Ryan and Victoria exchanged a glance. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Victoria asked. "That we should go talk to her?" "Yeah." They walked toward the woman together, partners in every sense of the word, ready to be for her what Victoria had been for Ryan that cold night, ready to stop, to see, to help, because that's what you do when you've been saved. You save someone else. The woman looked up as they approached, fear and hope warring in her expression. "Hi," Victoria said gently. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" And the cycle continued, kindness rippling outward, one person at a time, proving that in a system designed to let people fall through the cracks, sometimes all it takes is someone willing to catch them. Sometimes all it takes is someone who stops.